Welcome to Mr. Nightbleed. Tonight, in 7 creepiest cemeteries in California that are truly haunted, we step through the rusted gates of burial grounds where names are carved in stone. Flowers wither overnight and the earth itself remembers what we try to forget. These are chilling accounts of bells that toll without wind, whispers leaking from cracked mausoleums, and footsteps echoing across gravel paths when you know you are utterly alone. This is a new channel, and my goal this month is to reach 3,000 subscribers. Almost 90% of viewers watch and leave without subscribing. Don't be one of them. Subscribe now. Before we begin, share in the comments where you're watching from and what hour of the night it is for you. And if there is a cemetery in your town that unsettles you, type its name. Because once you step past the gates of these haunted resting grounds, not everything allows you to leave. Kill the lights, silence the world. Take a slow breath, and let us begin. I never planned on being the kind of person who trespasses in a cemetery, much less one with a gift shop and a map to famous graves. But a few months ago, I said yes to a favor I didn't understand. And now I'm writing this because I keep waking up at 3:17 a.m. with the sound of applause in my ears. It's not a roaring stadium kind of applause. It's the kind that swells and fades like an ocean, polite and patient like an audience that never goes home. This happened in Los Angeles, at Hollywood Forever. If you're local, you already know the place. If you're not, it's the cemetery off Santa Monica Boulevard that hovers between touristy and sacred. They hold film screenings on the lawns in the summer. You can buy postcards. It's strange and beautiful and wrong in a way that only makes sense when you stand inside the gates and the city noise dims to a low, hot whisper. The favor was for my friend Maya. We met in film school and never grew out of saying yes to weird projects. She was interviewing for a job at a production company that churned out docuseries with titles like Lost Legends and Echoes of Fame. She wanted a little speck, piece, something eerie but tasteful about the myth that the dead in Hollywood never stopped performing. Nothing sensational, she said. No jump scares. Just mood. I told her she didn't need me. I fix audio more than I shoot. And the only camera I own is a workhorse DSLR with a scratch on the sensor. But Maya can sell ice to a penguin. And she said she needed someone who could keep a clean sound bed in a place notorious for traffic and wind. Also, her brother Leo was visiting from Phoenix and wanted to see real Hollywood, which apparently meant graves. Leo is 21, sarcastic on the surface, soft underneath. He's never been good at hiding the fact that he worries. We went on a Saturday in August right before sunset. Maya had wrangled permission from the office to shoot for an hour after closing, as long as we stayed quiet and stuck to the main paths. A groundskeeper named Alvarez gave us wristbands that looked like concert passes and said, "You can hear the boulevard from almost everywhere, but if you point a mic in the wrong direction, you'll get the geese more than the traffic." I asked if he meant geese or ducks or peacocks. He said geese flatly, and then made a face like maybe he regretted bringing it up. There were people leaving with folded blankets from a daytime screening, and 2 women in black dresses taking photos near a marble angel. A couple argued softly by the map board about whether they'd already seen the mausoleum they were looking for. The sun slid down, caught on the palms, and turned everything copper. It didn't feel spooky. It felt like a park that hadn't decided if it was public or private. We moved through the rows with the awkward hush you put on when you want to seem respectful and not like you're casing the place. I've never been great in cemeteries, even regular ones. The names hit me like anchors. The dates do too. Maya, on the other hand, becomes a different person with a camera in her hands. She didn't talk much. She just pointed, looked, walked, looked again. Leo kept pace behind us with a backpack full of batteries and bottled water and granola bars he never remembered to eat. Our route was simple, B-roll of statues and flowers. A slow walk past the chapel, some textural shots of candles flickering behind glass. And if no one stopped us, a few wide frames toward Valentino's crypt in the cathedral mausoleum, close enough to feel the cool air on your cheek, but not close enough to be disrespectful. Maya wanted a single shot that suggested the weeping woman rumor without leaning on it. If you haven't heard it, the short version is this. Some visitors say they hear a woman crying near Valentino, and sometimes they feel a cold touch on their arm, like someone reaching for them in a theater. We saved the mausoleum for last. We took our time. The light got softer and then dimmed for real. The city noise fell like a curtain, and that's when I decided I should do a live ambient capture. Just 5 minutes of room tone from the open air to layer under everything later. I set the recorder on a flat stone. I did a slow pan with the boom up the way I was taught. Leo stepped back to check his phone and then put it away. "I don't have service," he whispered to no one in particular, like the cemetery was a giant airplane. We were halfway across the lawn that opens to the big reflecting pond when the air shifted. It was warm all day, almost sticky, the kind of heat that tires you out in a dull way. But as we crossed that stretch, I felt a thread of cold on my forearms, like walking past an open freezer. It was there and gone, then there again, as if I was passing through thin, invisible curtains. "Do you feel that?" Maya asked. She rubbed her arms and made a face like she was annoyed with herself for asking. "Cool spot," I said. "Probably the water." The pond held the last light like a dark mirror. A dragonfly skimmed it. I tried not to think about the way the cool came in layers, like a set of hands that didn't want to be noticed. We made it to the cathedral mausoleum right as Alvarez approached with a flashlight and a clipboard. He had the patient look of someone who has to ask children to stop running near headstones. "We're closing to the public now," he said. "You have 15 minutes. We'll be quick," Maya said. She showed him the wristbands, and he nodded. Then his eyes snagged on my recorder, and he said, "If you're going to use that in there, keep it low. The acoustics bounce weird." "We're just getting ambi," I told him. "If you hear anything you don't like," he said, in a tone that suggested this was something he told everyone, "just step back outside for a minute." It gets less intense fast. It would have been easy to laugh. He wasn't trying to scare us. He wasn't even doing that performative spooky tour guide thing. He said it like he'd tell someone to bring a hat because the sun is harsh. We thanked him. He nodded and moved on, and we went in. The cathedral mausoleum is beautiful in a very particular way. Polished floors, marble walls that hold the names like score marks. The air smelled like stone and old flowers. Our footsteps were too loud and then not loud at all, dampened by the space. I raised the boom mic slowly and felt that same thin thread of cold lift the hair on my arms. There was a lamplight glow down the main hallway, and every little cut or scratch on the wall made a shadow. We didn't go straight to Valentino. That felt wrong. Maya paced herself like a visitor, letting the lens linger on plaques, cutways, stained glass, a small vase with a velvet ribbon. The ribbon's color had leached to something in between red and brown. I looked up at the ceiling, which is probably not something you're supposed to do in a mausoleum. And I thought, each little square up there would have a sound in it if someone knew how to listen. We were quiet for a long stretch. I could feel Leo watching us, hands in his pockets, a little stiff. And then we heard it. A whisper of sound that wasn't the city and wasn't our steps and wasn't the air. It came from around the corner, deeper in, not loud, not even clear. Just a soft motion of noise, like someone exhaling after a cry. Maya glanced at me with her journalist face on, like, "Did you get that?" I tapped the recorder lightly to mark the moment, then felt stupid because tapping a recorder in a mausoleum felt like knocking on something you shouldn't knock on. We reached the corner and saw nothing. The light made the next corridor look longer than it probably is. I don't remember a draft, but I remember the cold again. On the outer part of my upper arm, like a hand that didn't want to be called a hand. I told myself it was airflow. Old buildings do that. I told myself I was tired and hungry and primed by Maya's pitch. We were close enough to Valentino's crypt now that I could make out the little offerings people leave. Flowers, notes, a small glass bottle with a paper tucked around it. I didn't read the names. I never read names in places like that. It's an old rule I made after almost saying one out loud in a cemetery back home and feeling like a dog that tried to talk. We stopped a respectful distance away. Maya set the tripod slow. Leo stood behind us, making himself small. The sound came again. Not a sob, not exactly. If you've ever listened to a radio between stations and thought you heard a voice, it was like that. But wet, like someone swallowed the end of a word. "Okay," Maya whispered. "Okay." I didn't want to turn the boom toward the crypt like I was fishing. I kept it neutral and tried to collect the room as if it were weather. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. I thought, crazy as it sounds, about audiences. About how a body that needed applause would crave it like a drug. About how a place like this teaches the living how to stand quiet and look forward and wait. Who would leave first? The performer or the crowd? Behind us, the lights shifted. They didn't dim exactly, but they changed color. Like someone slid a gel in front of a bulb. That's when my recorder picked up something I didn't hear with my ears. I found out later. At the time, I only felt Leo's hand brush my elbow as if he wanted to grab it and decided not to. We were still for so long that the silence turned into pressure. Eventually, Maya nodded as if she'd ticked a box in her head. "We have it," she whispered. "Let's go." We left quickly and carefully. When we pushed back into the night air, I wanted to breathe the way you do after a long swim. But the air outside was flat and warm, and the boulevard noise felt paper-thin. Alvarez stood by the path with the flashlight angled low like a camp counselor. "All good?" he asked. "Yeah," Maya said. "Thank you. We're done." He looked at our faces and then looked past us toward the mausoleum door, the way people glance at a stove they know is off anyway. "Sometimes it's loud," he said, as if that were an apology. "What is?" Leo asked. He sounded defensive and young and tired. "The building," Alvarez said. "It's a lot of stone. Sound carries." We thanked him again and made our way to the lot. It was dark enough now that the palms were just the idea of trees against the light pollution. We packed the car in a hurry, like you do after a day at the beach when you're sandy and done and want a shower. Maya was quiet, not in her focused way anymore, but in a watching her own thoughts way. Leo handed me the bag with the recorder like it might be hot. We stopped for tacos on Melrose and didn't talk about the mausoleum. No one said anything until we hit the freeway and the city didn't look like a place anymore, just light stacked on darkness. At home, the files transferred perfectly. I scrubbed through the ambient tracks first, like I always do, hunting for pops and hum. The outdoor bed was fine, traffic, a plane far off, leaves hushing each other, a short pass of voices that never got close. The indoor take was too clean. I took off my headphones and put them back on. I raised the gain for a minute to see if I could tip it into noise. I didn't have to. The recorder had already done the work. At 21 minutes and 14 seconds into the mausoleum track, the waveform lifted like a breath. What rose out of it wasn't a voice. It was a swell. If you've worked audio, you know what a room full of bodies sounds like when they all do something together. A laugh, a cough, a shift. This was the opposite of a laugh. It was that very first inhale a crowd takes right before they clap. The air thickens. The sound pulls back like a wave. Then it breaks. They applauded, not loud at all, polite, soft. Dozens of hands, maybe hundreds, clapping once, twice. Then a hush, and a sound like someone exhaling through their teeth, and then nothing again except the hum of electricity and the imperfections in the mic. I rewound and listened 3 more times. I marked the file. I tried to rule out the obvious. Could it be us? No, we were still. Could it be the building settling? I've heard settling. It's a complaint, a creak, a click. Could it be someone else in the corridor? We were alone. The office had cleared it for us. The track knew what I was thinking and refused to comment. I thought about texting Maya, but it was late, and I didn't want to be the one to make it into something. I closed the project and told myself I'd check again in the morning. I put my headphones in a drawer. I climbed into bed and fell asleep fast, the way you do when you finally stop holding your breath. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up with applause in my ears. It wasn't the recording. It wasn't anything in the room. It was the memory of the sound in a way that didn't feel like memory. The clapping rose and fell. It came from no direction I could point to. I opened my eyes and saw nothing. I stood up and swung my legs to the floor and felt the same thin strip of cold kiss my arms. I didn't go back to sleep. In the morning, I told myself it was a dream. I told myself everything you'd tell yourself. I made coffee so strong it tasted like a dare. I put on the headphones again and scrubbed through the file, and at 21:14 the swell rose. The applause broke soft and steady. It wasn't exactly like the sound in my head, but it was close enough to make my scalp tighten. I sent Maya a clip. I told her it was weird reverb. I told her I'd do another pass in RX to see if I could isolate the frequency. She replied with a thumbs up, and then a minute later, "Does it sound like clapping to you?" I typed, deleted, typed again. "Room noise," I sent. Could be anything. She sent back a single word. "Audience. We were supposed to do pickups on Monday. We didn't. Maya canceled, said she had a stomach thing. I didn't push it." Leo texted me a YouTube link to a video called Top 10 Unexplained Sounds Captured in Famous Cemeteries, which I didn't click. I went to work, and every time I walked past the room where I edit, I felt a pressure in my left ear like I was about to take off in a plane. That night, I fell asleep with the TV on, thinking it would drown out whatever my brain was doing. At 3:17 a.m., the show's laugh track blurred into that same rolling, patient clapping. I sat up so fast I made myself dizzy. The sound didn't stop. It didn't get louder. It hung there like an obligation. On Tuesday, Maya came over with a hard drive and a bag of oranges because her grandmother thinks citrus chases out bad air. She didn't take off her shoes. She stood in the doorway to my edit room like she was checking the temperature. "Play it," she said. We listened together. The applause sounded worse with someone else in the room. There was something under it I hadn't caught before. Not a voice. Not words. Just the shape of a person trying to speak and not quite being able to. When it ended, Maya rested her forehead on her hands and didn't move. "We can scrap it," I said. "It's not like anyone's paying us." "It's good," she said, and then, "It's all wrong." It doesn't feel like something was trying to scare us. It feels like they were waiting. Waiting for what? For us to do anything at all. She asked if I'd heard anything at night. I lied and said no. She didn't call me on it. Leo texted us a photo from the highway. A rearview mirror, the city shrinking behind him. "Driving back today," he wrote. "That place sticks to you." We decided to take the track to Alvarez. It felt like the only adult thing to do. Maybe he'd laugh and we could be embarrassed and move on. We went back to Hollywood Forever on a Wednesday afternoon when the heat was less and the light made everything look forgiving. In the office, a woman with a kind voice called to the grounds on a walkie, and 5 minutes later Alvarez came in with dust on his knees like he'd been scraping something. We played the clip on my phone with cheap earbuds split between us. He listened with his eyes down and his mouth aligned. When it finished, he didn't ask us to play it again. He just said, "Some people get clapping. Some people get crying. You got clapping. That's a thing?" Maya asked. He shrugged like a guy discussing which trees drop more sap. "People come here expecting something. Maybe they hear what they bring. Maybe sometimes the place does whatever it does anyway. How do you make it stop?" I heard myself say. My voice sounded too loud in the small office. Alvarez rubbed the pads of his fingers together, the way my grandfather did when he was thinking. "Don't treat it like a show," he said. "Don't give it a shape. No questions, no calling. No standing there like you're about to take a bow. If you feel like you want to listen, go outside and listen to the street. It's easier for it to lose you if you're already in the noise." On the drive home, Maya said, "I think we should shelf the project." She said it gently, but it was a sentence with a lid on it. "Agreed," I said. "No one needs to see it." We didn't talk about how decisions aren't always the end of things. We didn't talk about what we'd already done by pointing a microphone into a place built for echoes. I pulled into my spot and turned off the engine and let the silence sit. That night I left the TV off. I put my phone face down. I lay in the dark and tried to breathe like a person who wasn't waiting. At 3:17 a.m., the clapping started, soft and sure. I didn't get up. I didn't look around. I didn't speak. I pictured the boulevard, taillights, billboards, someone eating a late burger, someone closing a gate. I pictured the sound getting lost in all that, like a singer stepping off stage and slipping into the crowd. It faded. Not all at once, not like a switch. It thinned until it was only the idea of sound, and then it was gone. And when I woke up at 6:45, my room smelled like oranges. We never cut the piece. Maya didn't take the job. She said she'd rather make stories about living people doing living things. Leo jokes that he'll meet us there a year from now for a blanket on the grass and a movie, but the joke doesn't land. Alvarez nods when he sees me at the gate sometimes, like we share a secret, which I guess we do. I still have the track. It sits in a folder on my desktop that I don't open. It doesn't feel like mine to delete. Some nights I catch myself reaching for headphones at 3:15 like I want to hear the applause arrive, like I want to time it. I don't. I lie there and imagine other sounds instead. A fountain, a bus, the scrape of a rake on gravel as someone who knows the place better than I ever will, keeps it in order. If you go to Hollywood Forever near closing and stand by the edge of the pond, pay attention to the air on your arms. Walk without pausing long enough to be a shape against the light. Don't say any names out loud. And whatever you hear, crying, clapping, a breath pulled in and held, don't give it your quiet like it's a ticket. Keep your feet moving. Let the city take you back. The show's over. Let it be over, unless it isn't. Last week, Maya sent me a voice memo from an interview she was doing for something else. She didn't say where. The file was only 9 seconds long. In it, there's a woman's voice talking about her grandfather, warm and ordinary, and then there's a thin flutter at the edge of the sound, like pages turning. If you don't know what you're listening for, you won't hear it. If you do, you will. 3 slow claps, polite, patient, waiting their turn. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but I need to put this somewhere so it stops looping in my head. This all happened in Colma, California, the little town south of San Francisco that's mostly cemeteries. Locals call it the City of Souls. If you've ever driven through there at night, you know how the fog moves. It doesn't roll, it folds. It creeps between the headstones like it knows the paths. I used to think that was just a mood locals like to sell to tourists. After what happened, I don't think anyone is selling anything. It was late October on a Sunday that bled into a Monday. I was visiting my sister Mia, who lives in Daly City. We spent the day doing family errands, and on the way back she asked to stop in Colma so she could leave flowers on our father's friend's grave. His name was Arturo. He had looked out for our dad at his first union job after we immigrated, and he used to bring us pan dulce when we were kids. Mia keeps little promises like that. There were 3 of us, me, Mia, and my friend Devin, who'd come along because he'd never seen Colma and thought it was weirdly beautiful. I told him it was just fog and stone and a lot of quiet. He grinned and said, "So, weirdly beautiful." I drove. My hatchback rattles on cold nights, which Devin tried to fix with a well-placed punch to the dashboard when the glove box buzzed, but it only made another sound. We entered Colma around dusk. The streetlights hummed. We passed a florist that was closing, a small market with a hand-drawn sign for hot boba, and a deli whose owner waved at no one in particular, just swinging an arm like he always did at that hour. On the hill, a white cross cut into the gray sky. The cemeteries stretched forever, divided by chain-link fences and long drives with names like El Camino Real and Hillside. The headstones were uneven when you looked at them in the fog, like a skyline from another age with broken teeth. Our car started to lose power near the gate. It wasn't dramatic. No hood smoke. No banging. Just that sinking feeling when the engine stops answering your foot. The radio went quiet like someone turned the dial between stations. The dashboard lights dimmed and pulsed. Then everything came back to normal as if a hand had let go of the volume knob. We exchanged a look. Mia said, "Don't, Colma stories." I laughed because I didn't want to feel the way I was starting to feel. The cemetery we picked was one of the older ones. That's as specific as I'll get. It had tall cypress trees that a breeze can turn into ocean sounds, and rows that dip and curl around family plots with iron fences. There were those glass-fronted niches in the mausoleum walls with little photo ovals from the 1940s. You probably know the place if you know Colma. We arrived right before closing. A security guard in a puffy jacket was finishing his rounds on a cart. He had that end-of-shift stare that says he's thinking about dinner. He told us 15 minutes. We promised we'd be quick. His name tag read Alvarez, and he had a radio earpiece. He looked at the fog like he didn't trust it. Arturo was in Section 1, row 30-something. We had the plot number in a text. We walked along the gravel road, shoes crunching, our breath turning to smoke. There were other people still there. An older couple straightening flowers, a man by a small stone rubbing his face with both hands, a teenage boy in a hoodie who kept walking past the same 4 headstones like he wasn't sure which one he wanted to stand in front of. Background scenes, nothing dramatic, but the quiet made everything sound like a secret. We found Arturo with a small wrench in his vase to loosen the rusted ring that held it in place. People leave tools like that for the next person. Mia put the flowers in and whispered something only he and she understood. Devin noticed a snail moving up the stone. "Even the snails have nowhere else to be," he said. It made me smile then shiver. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way his voice felt swallowed. We were about to head back when the fog pressed in. That's the only way I can explain it. It pressed. Sound dulled, and the path we came in on felt farther than it should have been. The teenage boy was gone, and so was the older couple. The man rubbing his face had turned away from us. He was motionless, hands at his sides. I didn't see him leave or move. He just shifted from one frame in my memory to the next. "Let's go," Mia said, folding the empty plastic around the bouquet into a square. "Before they lock us in." We walked faster. I clicked my key fob as we came into sight of the lot. My car chirped in my pocket. which didn't make sense because the keys were in my hand. I pulled them out. The fob was warm, like it had been sitting under a desk light. That's when we saw her. She was halfway down another row. A woman in a pale coat, standing with her back to us at a headstone that had a black and white photo oval at the top. Her hair was dark and long and wet with fog. The picture in the oval wasn't her. It was an older woman wearing pearls. But the woman in the coat had her hand on that photo like she was checking its temperature. Mia slowed. "Do you know her?" I shook my head. Devin said, "She's going to get locked in if Alvarez doesn't see her." "Excuse me?" Mia called gently. "They're closing." The woman didn't turn. Mia took a step toward her and then another. The gravel was loud and then somehow not. I put out a hand and held Mia's sleeve without thinking. It felt like tugging a child back from a curb. I don't mean that insultingly. It felt protective, automatic. The woman finally moved. Her hand lifted from the photo oval. She kept her back to us, lifted her chin toward the cypress, and exhaled. It was a long breath. When she did turn, she looked like she had been crying in a very quiet way. No red eyes, just wet cheeks, and that weird calm that comes after a certain kind of cry. She wasn't scary. She was ordinary. She had a face you'd trust at a grocery store checkout. "We're closing," Mia repeated, softer now. The woman nodded. "I know," she said. Her voice sounded like it had been used all day. "I'm just finishing." She walked past us with a small, polite smile, her eyes on the ground. As she passed, she touched Mia's elbow the way women do in crowded kitchens. Just a moment of warmth. Then she was gone into the fog toward the gate. We got to the car. I pressed unlock again. The lights flashed. Devin got in the back. Mia took the passenger seat and snapped on her seatbelt like a reflex. I turned the key. The starter clicked, then whirred, then nothing. I tried again, nothing. The battery light came on, then the oil light, then both went off. The radio turned itself to static and then to a station that doesn't exist, where a voice was reading numbers in Spanish. I shut it off. I tried to laugh. It came out mean. "Colma stories," Mia said, but there was no smile in it this time. Alvarez tapped the hood. I hadn't seen him walk up. He leaned down to the window and I rolled it halfway. "You kids okay?" he asked. Up close, I could see the cracked skin around his nails, the coffee stain on his jacket. Real person details. "Cars being dramatic," I said. "It happens," he said. "Happens right here, usually." He said it like a joke he tells once a week. Popped the hood. He had one of those jump starter packs in his cart. He clipped to the battery and told me to try it. The car coughed and lived. My shoulders dropped. He handed me a business card through the window. His cell number. "If it acts up outside the gate, pull in tight to the curb. Don't block the driveway." "I'll keep an eye out." "Thanks," I said. Mia said thanks. Devin did a two-finger salute from the back. Before we pulled away, Alvarez leaned to the window again and said almost as an afterthought, "Don't stop on El Camino if anyone waves you down. Call me and I'll send a unit. People try things." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The fog made his words feel heavier than they should have. We drove toward the exit slowly, like you do when you're waiting to see if the fix is going to stick. The fog brightened ahead of us. I thought it was a headlight from the guard's cart, but it was a small white glow hanging over the road like a paper lantern. As we got closer, I saw it wasn't above the road. It was right at ground level. A candle in a glass jar someone had set down and forgotten. As we passed, the jar rolled a fraction, like the gravel under it shifted. No one else seemed to see it. I didn't say anything because it felt like if I named it, it would be mine. We reached the gate. The tracks of the cart were wet and sharp in the gravel. There was a small line of cars leaving, and the fog haloed each brake light. Our turn came. I rolled onto the street. The engine hiccuped and then was fine. We exhaled. We turned onto the main road and headed toward the freeway. That's when Mia said, "Where did she go?" "Who?" Devin said. "The woman in the coat," Mia said. "She didn't pass us. She went toward the gate. She probably cut through to the sidewalk," I said. "There's a footpath along the fence." Mia turned in her seat to look behind us. "Okay," she said in a voice that meant not okay. She faced forward again and pulled her hoodie strings tight. The night was ordinary for 10 minutes. Stoplights. A bus exhaling at the corner with one passenger visible, reading a book under the dim interior light. A florist's neon buzzing even though it was closed. The ordinary is a thread you hold with both hands when you're trying not to think about something. We got on I-280 and merged toward Daly City. We talked about dinner like people talk about dinner when they don't mean it. The radio, when I turned it back on, had found an actual station. Then my phone vibrated. I had a missed call notification from a number labeled unknown. Then another. The voicemail icon appeared. I showed Mia, and we both made that face where the eyebrows go up and the mouth goes flat. Devin leaned between the seats and said, "Put it on speaker. If it's a scam, I want to judge the accent." I hit play. At first it was dead space, a quiet, a long one. Not the kind that means a person is thinking. The kind that means no one is there. Then wind, no fog. If you know that sound, you know it. Then my name said once, like someone testing how it fits, Alejandro. My name said the way my dad used to say it when I was in trouble. I didn't breathe. The voice didn't match anyone I know. It was close to a voice I knew. That made it worse. Then a pause. Then Mia's name, but wrong. Like the syllables were in the right order and some were missing. Me. Ah. The end of her name got lost in the fog sound. Devin whispered, "Who is that?" In the same tone people whisper in a church. There was more quiet. Then gravel crunching far away. Then very clearly, like a recorder lifted to someone's mouth. "Don't stop on El Camino if anyone waves you down." Alvarez's voice. I swear to you it was Alvarez's voice. The same flat care, the exact phrasing. Then the voicemail ended at exactly 1:11 long. No one spoke for a full minute. I had to remind myself to breathe. The car hummed, and I can't explain it other than it felt like the hum was coming from the passenger seat, not the engine. I glanced at Mia, she glanced at me, and we both looked forward because it felt like if we looked anywhere else, we'd see something in the mirror we shouldn't. "Call back," Devin said, because he is a person who pushes into problems. I hit the number. It rang twice and went to a system message. "The number you dialed is not in service." Devin mouthed, "What?" Like the word had shifted languages on him. We got to Mia's place. She lives in a quiet street with salt-stained cars and potted succulents. I parked under a streetlight. The engine shivered once and then quieted. We went inside. We didn't talk much. We pretended to be normal. Devin made popcorn and poured it into a bowl that had a hairline crack shaped like a lightning bolt. The crack caught the light the way water does. Mia said she was going to take a shower. Steam crept under the bathroom door. I watched a dumb show with Devin where loud people argue about houses they can't afford. I kept checking my phone to see if the voicemail had changed, like it was a file that could update on its own. When Mia came out, she was pale. She wasn't the "I had a creepy thought" pale. She was the "my body knows something" pale. "What?" I asked. She sat on the arm of the couch. "I had my hoodie on the whole time," she said. "In the cemetery. That woman touched my elbow like a kitchen touch." She turned her arm to show us. There was a small smudge there. Not dirt, not makeup. It looked like the gray you get when you rub a pencil on your skin. The shape of fingers. 4, not 5. The thumb was missing. I told myself the woman had worn gloves and there was graphite on them from writing on a card. I told myself a lot of things. Devin took a photo with his phone because that's what Devin does. When he looked at the picture, he frowned. "That's weird," he said. He held the phone out. The smudge in the photo looked the same as it had in real life, but faintly. So faintly I almost gasped. There was something like handwriting near it. Not clear, shadow writing. It might have been letters. It might have been my brain hoping the world is ordinary. We slept badly. I took the couch. I heard buses groan and someone on a skateboard rattle over a crack in the sidewalk at 2 a.m. At 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new voicemail from the same not-in-service number. I played it. More silence. Then the sound of a cart rolling over gravel. Then Alvarez's voice again. 15 minutes. Then my own voice this time asking, "Do you know her?" I remember saying that to Mia, but not that exact way. This was perfect. It had my lazy Ys and my soft R. But the tone was different. Too careful I didn't wake anyone. I lay there feeling like the room was a shape being drawn around me. Every streetlight shadow felt like a line. The next morning I went back to Colma. I told Mia and Devin I was getting coffee. I was mad at my own fear. That sound in the voicemails felt like it had my name in its mouth. It felt disrespectful. I drove past houses with wind chimes, past a man walking a small dog in a sweater. past the deli owner who waved again at empty air. He waved toward me this time. The fog wasn't as heavy, but it was present, like someone listening from the doorway. At the gate, Alvarez was there again. Maybe he'd worked a double. Maybe time in Colma doesn't run like everywhere else. I don't know. He recognized me. "You came back," he said. "Car started up fine this morning," I said, like that was why I was there. He pushed his cart door closed. "I figured you might." He took off his cap and rubbed his head. "People come back. Did you call me?" I asked. It sounded stupid in the air. He shook his head. "We don't call the living," he said. And I didn't like how the sentence was shaped. He caught himself. "I mean, we don't call visitors. We don't have a phone list." "What happened?" He looked genuinely curious, genuinely ready to help with jumper cables or a radio call. I told him about the voicemails, about the phrases, about the length. I didn't tell him about the touch on Mia's elbow. That felt like ours. He listened, and then he nodded in a slow way that suggested he'd heard a version of this before. "Voicemails are new," he said finally. "Used to be radios. Used to be you'd hear it on channel 2. Then we all switched to digital and the noise got different. Phones pick up more now, like fog is a kind of network." He smiled a little at his own bad metaphor. "I'd tell you it's the hills, the wires, the old copper laying around. Or I'd tell you a story. Which one do you want?" "Both," I said. He pointed with his chin at the mausoleum. "Between those walls there's old rebar. It can make a radio scream. Your phone can grab early bits of a call and the end of a different one. That's the hills thing. As for the story..." He looked over my shoulder into the rows. "This place has seen more grief than some small countries. My abuela said tears are salt and salt holds memory. Maybe when the fog licks the stones it picks things up." He shrugged. "I don't know. I just tell people not to stop for anyone who waves them down." "Why that?" I asked. "Because people wave you down," he said. "They're never where they should be. Wrong side of the gate. Wrong time. They ask for help moving flowers or fixing a vase, and then you're not where you should be either." He looked at me carefully when he said the next thing. "Did anyone touch you?" His eyes flicked to my arm. "No," I lied. He nodded like he believed me, but also like he didn't need me to tell him the truth to have already decided what he thought. "If your phone rings again," he said, "let it. Don't answer. Don't bring it back in here." He lifted his hand as if to touch my shoulder and then didn't. "Some things want to keep talking." "Don't make it easy," I thanked him. He waved, turned his cart, and trundled off down a row. As he drove, the radio on his belt popped and cracked. A woman's voice laughed, short and not happy. Alvarez didn't react. Either he didn't hear it or he was used to pretending he didn't. I walked to section 1. I told myself I just wanted to make sure the flowers were still upright. I found Arturo's stone. The plastic ring had not been tightened back down. I twisted it with the wrench and smudged rust on my thumb. I looked at the photo on his stone, him in his work shirt squinting at the sun like he didn't trust what it promised. I said thank you to him, not out loud, in my head, but it felt heard. On the way back, I saw the woman in the pale coat again. She wasn't far. 2 rows over, same photo oval, same hand on it. The fog was thin now, and when she turned toward me, I recognized her face in a way that had no logic. It was the face of a woman who used to sit near our dad at union meetings, the woman who watched us when our mother was late from a double shift. She had a mole by her left eye and a way of smiling without showing her teeth. She had been old then. She looked younger now. Or I was making that up. Memory can be a liar when it's scared. She looked at me like she had been waiting for me. Not in a spooky, wide-eyed way. In a patient way. I lifted a hand. It was a stupid gesture, a half-wave. She mirrored it, and I had the awful cold idea that she was learning from me in real time. The way a kid learns a new trick. "Do you need help?" I asked, and my voice sounded too loud. She tilted her head. It made her hair move and drip. "Do you?" she asked back, and her voice was wrong, like a tape that's been stretched. I took 1 step backward before I could stop myself. The gravel shifted and made a sound like that rolled glass jar again. I thought of the warmth of Mia's elbow when the woman had touched her. 4 fingers, no thumb. I stared at the woman's hands now. She had all 5 fingers. They were very still. "I have to go," I said, and it was the truest sentence I have ever said. She smiled at that. It was a kind smile. It made my eyes burn for a second the way eyes burn when you remember being a child and someone is nice to you. Then her smile faded. She lifted her hand once more, not to touch me, but to point, not at me, past me, to the gate. I turned and walked, quick, not running. I didn't look back. Alvarez was near the entrance, talking to a man in a Giants jacket. He raised his chin at me as I passed like, good choice. My phone buzzed as I crossed under the arch. Unknown. I watched it light up and I did not answer. It buzzed again. And again. The fourth time it stopped. A voicemail. I didn't listen to it in the car. I drove to the coffee place in Daly City, where the baristas already hate me because I never know what I want. I ordered something hot and sweet and sat in a corner and put the phone on the table like it was a person. I opened the voicemail. It started before the timer rolled, as if it had been there waiting. Fog, gravel. Then, so soft I only heard it because I had the phone pressed so tight to my ear that the plastic left a mark. A voice said, "Tell him the ring is loose." A woman's voice. Familiar in the way that makes your heart feel like a drawer is closing on it. Then another voice, mine, "Do you need help?" Then a third voice, Alvarez's. "We don't call the living." Then the call ended. At 11 again, I deleted it. I went to the trash folder and deleted it there. It didn't make me feel better. Here is the part that keeps the loop running. I changed my number a week later. New area code, new SIM, new carrier. I didn't tell anyone except my sister and Devin. The first night after the change, at 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown. I stared at it until it stopped. The voicemail icon appeared. I didn't listen in bed. I got up, I went to the kitchen. I sat on the cold counter because the chair felt too human. I played it, silence, then fog, then a small polite laugh, the kind women have in crowded kitchens. Then very softly, 4 fingers tapping a glass. Not 5, 4, not a sound you can identify until you do. Then Alvarez again, farther away, like someone had put the recorder in a pocket. 15 minutes. And then my name in my father's trouble voice. And then the click. I haven't been back to Colma since. Mia says the smudge on her elbow washed away. But sometimes when she takes a photo with the flash on, that part of her skin reflects light differently, like it's a different material. Devin keeps the picture he took of the smudge in a folder he swears he never opens. He says he tries to show it to people and then forgets his phone at home. I asked Alvarez once over the phone if anyone ever hears their own voice in those calls. There was a long pause. Then he said, "People hear what keeps them coming back." It wasn't an answer. Or it was the only answer anyone can give. If you're reading this because you like stories, that's fine. It reads better than it lives. I don't have a message in this beyond don't stop on El Camino if anyone waves you down. And if your car stutters by a gate in Colma, don't think of it as a coincidence. Think of it as a hand, letting go of the knob, deciding whether to hold you a little longer. And if your phone rings in the night from a number that won't exist when you call back, you can let it go to voicemail. You can delete it. You can change your number. The fog in Colma remembers better than you do. Sometimes it borrows voices to say simple things in the old ways. Time's up, 15 minutes, the ring is loose. Sometimes it learns new ways to keep talking. I'm posting this because last night I played the most recent voicemail again, even after I promised myself I wouldn't. I heard the gravel and the breath and what might have been a cart. And then, under everything, the faintest sound of metal turning on metal, like a small wrench tightening a ring, like someone, somewhere, taking care of what I forgot to tighten. It was kind. It was careful. And then, at the very end, not a voice, but the softest touch on my elbow, not on my skin, on the air next to it. 4 points of pressure as if memory had hands. I don't know if that's comfort or a warning. In Colma, the silence feels alive. Maybe it's just full. Maybe that's the same thing. I'm trying not to pick up if it calls again. I'm trying to remember that not every hand that reaches for you wants to pull you through the gate. Some just want to know you felt it. Some want you to keep listening. I don't usually post stuff like this, and I know how it sounds. But it's been sitting on my chest for months, and I haven't slept right since. If you've ever been to San Diego's Old Town, you probably walked right past the place I'm talking about. Pioneer Park. Neat grass, a few old stone slabs set into the lawn, picnic tables, a school next door. Tourists moving toward the restaurants and the shops with the twinkle lights. It looks harmless. It looks like a park. It used to be a cemetery. People used to call it Calvary Cemetery. Over 1,000 graves. The city turned it into a park in the 60s. They took away most of the headstones and left the dead underneath. Years later, they added a memorial wall, some surviving stones on the hill, a fence. You can see the stones from the sidewalk on Washington Place. Families eat sandwiches at benches. Kids run through the grass. And underneath all that, there are still people. I knew the basic history. Everyone local does. But I didn't plan to go there at night. It happened because my friend Luis got stuck on a story. Luis is the guy who goes too far on dares. He edits videos for a travel channel and thinks every place has an angle if you hang around long enough. He's also the friend who texts at 9 p.m., "Bro, you up?" And the next message is a pin drop that says, "Come through." That night it was me, my sister Maya, and Luis. Late May. Warm evening. Memorial Day weekend. Old Town was busy and felt safe. We had eaten at a place with string lights and live music. We were walking it off, listening to buskers arguing about horchata versus Jamaica. The plan was to hit the Old Town ghost tour as a joke. We were that group. The guide's lantern, the rehearsed pauses. We laughed through most of it. When we cut through the edge of the park on the way back to the car, Luis stopped dead. He pointed at the fence and the hill where the surviving headstones sit. There was a man placing small white flowers in front of one of the stones. No lantern, no tour group, just him. He stood there with his head bowed like he was listening for something in the ground. "Hold up," Luis said. "Let's check it out." "It's closed," Maya said. "Don't start." The park wasn't exactly closed. There were no gates, just signs. The path lights threw that soft orange glow and everything else looked blue under the sky. You could hear the traffic on Washington Street, the clink from the restaurants, even a kid crying one block over. The hill with the stones was quiet in a different way. No voices made it up there. It was like someone had put a glass bowl over that patch and pressed down. Luis leaned both hands on the fence and peered in. "I read about this one," he said, even though he hadn't said anything about Pioneer Park before that moment. "There are still hundreds of bodies under the grass. They only put the stones they could find back on that hill. Most of the dead don't have markers anymore. That's literally why it's called a memorial," Maya said. She turned to me. "Don't do the thing where you get curious, please. I was already doing the thing. I hate that about myself. Curiosity like a twitch. I told myself I'd just take a peek and then we'd go." The man with the flowers looked up. He was older, in a gray hoodie, face like carved driftwood. He wasn't startled to see us. He held up a hand like a crossing guard. We froze. Then he put a finger to his lips and pointed down at the ground in front of the stone. That's when I heard it, a faint scraping under the dirt, not like an animal. A slow, dry slide, as if something with elbows was turning over in a narrow space and didn't have room to lift its shoulders. It stopped when I heard it. "Like it knew, wind," Luis said. "It's just the wind in the eucalyptus. There was no wind." The eucalyptus leaves hung there like they were painted on. Maya tugged my sleeve. "We're going." The man in the hoodie was already walking down the hill toward us. "Don't step off the path," he said when he got close. His voice was calm, local, used to giving directions. "That grass isn't grass, it's ribs." "Excuse me?" Maya said. He looked past us to the families in the lower part of the park, the people packing up coolers, a couple arguing softly beside a yoga mat. They paved over most of the markers. That's why it's easy to forget where you are. But past midnight, they remember. "They want to be counted," Luis smiled. "Are you with a tour?" He didn't smile back. "No tour. Just telling you what I wish someone had told me. Don't come back after 11. If you do, bring exact change, quarters, and don't step on a name." "On a name?" I asked. He lifted a hand like he was going to touch my shoulder. He stopped himself like he remembered something. "Just don't." He walked past us toward the sidewalk and the street, the way you walk when you're leaving a room that doesn't want you. He joined the flow of people and was gone. Luis was vibrating. "Okay, but that's content. That's like... You can't pay for stuff that organic." Maya looked at me. "No, I'm not saying we stay," I said. "I just want to see the plaques on the sidewalk." I'd heard about them. Small brass plates embedded in the concrete on the edge of the park and over by the school. Names where the stones used to be before the park, before the city fitted benches over the dead. We walked the edge. The brass squares were there, dull with footprints, some partly obscured by gum or leaves. Names, dates, a mother, a sailor, a child 3 years old. I found myself stepping wide without meaning to. Maya did it too. Luis didn't. He walked right across them, then saw us avoiding them and laughed like we were being precious. He wasn't being mean. He was being himself. He was also live streaming. "Say hi," he said, aiming the camera at our faces. "Old Town After Dark, baby. We're at the park where they built over a cemetery. If I step on a name, do I get haunted?" "Stop it," Maya said. "Look at her," he told the phone. "She's sensitive. She can hear things." He was teasing, but he wasn't wrong. I do hear things. It's not psychic. It's just that my brain won't let go of a sound if it's weird. Faint stuff gets stuck in loops. That scraping, it felt like a fishbone in my throat. We started back toward the car. As we passed the school side of the park, Maya noticed something in the grass beyond the fence. A set of coins, 4 quarters and a nickel lined up like a runway, as if someone had put them there carefully and walked away. There were more further in at the base of a eucalyptus. "Luis filmed it. Offerings?" he said. "Don't take them," Maya said. "Who said I was going to take them?" Luis said, already sliding 2 quarters and the nickel into his pocket. He held up the other 2 for the camera. "For parking. It's for the living," he grinned. Then he rubbed his fingers together and frowned. "They're warm. You just picked them up." "No," he said, and he meant it. "Warm like mouth warm." "Okay," I said. "We're actually leaving." We left. We got to the car and argued about tacos versus going home and sleeping like normal people. And then we did the thing we always do when we're together and unsupervised. We made a stupid plan. Not because of the hoodie guy, because of Luis and his fear of boring footage. "Let's come back at midnight," he said, "just for 10 minutes. I'll keep the camera on. We won't leave the path. We'll bring quarters. We can cut it into the Old Town video. Everyone loves a haunted tag." Maya shook her head so hard her hair hit her cheeks. "No." Luis looked at me like he was asking permission to make her mad. "He does that sometimes. It's not fair. We'll stay on the path," he said. "We'll be respectful. If it feels off, we bounce." I don't know why I said yes. The part of me that gets pulled toward doors and rooftops and fences answered, before the part that carries my fear like a rabbit in its mouth. I heard myself say 10 minutes. Maya stared at me like I'd broken something small and important. We killed time at a coffee place on India Street. We watched people. We talked about nothing. We checked the weather. We checked the time. At 11:43, we went back. The park looked the same from the street. The path lights were still on. The busy hum of Old Town had dropped a few notches, like someone had closed a door 2 rooms over. We could see maybe 3 other people, a couple on a bench at the far end leaning into each other and a man walking a small dog who looked like a dust bunny with eyes. The dog refused to step off the concrete and lifted its paw when it got to a brass nameplate, and then put it down in the exact same spot, like it decided something and didn't tell the leg. We walked along the fence to the hill. No hoodie man this time. No flowers. The stones cast thin shadows on the grass. Luis kept his voice low for once. He was good at reading the way places breathe. Maya stopped at the foot of the slope. 10 minutes, she said. We count out loud. Luis pulled out his phone and slid it into a chest harness. He checked the red light. "Rolling," he said. He held out the 2 quarters and I gave him mine. Maya had 2 in her palm too. She wasn't smiling. We stepped off the sidewalk and onto the dirt path that curves up the hill. The change in temperature was small but sharp, like going from sun to shade. We weren't cold, but the air felt narrower, like the park only had so much of it up there and we had to use less. I heard it again, that dry slide, but faint and farther away. It stopped when I noticed it. I said nothing. We read the names on the stones like we were at a roll call. Family plots mostly. Twined arms, anchors, lambs. A stone with a chipped corner leaned into its neighbor like a tired person on a bus. Luis panned slowly like he'd been taught. Maya kept glancing at the grass between the path and the fence. You could tell she was trying not to imagine ribs. A few minutes in, we heard laughter from the lower field. 2 men walked by the picnic tables, tipsy, talking about a girl named Cassie. Every syllable slid past us as if it didn't know how to climb the hill. We were a glass bowl again. My ears popped, and I had the sudden childish urge to hold my nose and blow. I didn't. Halfway, Maya said, checking her watch. Luis leaned over a stone to read a name only half there. He wasn't touching it. He was careful, but his foot slipped on the hard dirt and shot out. He caught himself, but his pocket emptied. 2 quarters flashed in the air and bounced, one rolling, one skittering to a stop against the base of a stone and falling on its side. It didn't fall flat. It stood there, balanced, as if there was a tiny ridge keeping it upright. Then it trembled like something below it was humming at a frequency only metal could hear. "Okay," Luis said too loudly, as if to shame his own nerves. He stepped to pick it up. Maya slapped his arm. "Don't. She looked around like a polite person trying to address an entire room. "Sorry," she said to the air. "We'll get out of your way." No wind. No sound from traffic. A eucalyptus leaf detached from a branch and fell straight down without turning. Luis forced a laugh. "We've got 6 minutes." We didn't. We had however many seconds are between the last thing that feels like normal and the first thing that doesn't let you go back. I felt it, and if you've felt it before, you know what I mean. The surface beneath you goes from being the ground to being a lid. The space behind you goes from empty to full. Every line your eyes can draw suddenly becomes a doorframe. Something stood at the very top of the hill. I didn't see it move up there. It was just there, outlined by the sky like a shadow had learned how to hold itself upright. It was too tall for a person, but not so tall that you could dismiss it as a tree. There was no head, not that I could see. The shoulders were wrong. Narrow and lifted. It didn't sway. It didn't breathe. It had the stillness of something that's been a shape for a very long time and forgot how to be anything else. "Do you see?" Maya said. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Luis thought it was a trick of the path lights because of course he did. He took 2 steps up and the shape didn't get bigger the way things do when you walk toward them. It stayed the same size and the hill grew under it. The lens on his phone fogged for a second and then cleared. He made a sound I've never heard him make, not fear. Confusion, high and thin. "Back down," I said. We backed away, slow like you do when a dog is deciding if you're prey. Luis reached for the coin that was standing on its edge and Maya slapped his arm again. "Leave it," she whispered. "It isn't yours." "It was," he whispered back. "We found the path with our heels. The shape didn't follow, but the space between us got shorter anyway. That's the only way I can say it. The hill didn't move. We were the ones who were moving. And somehow we weren't the ones deciding how far each step took us." The scraping under the dirt started again, almost below my left shoe, and I did something I'm still ashamed of. I lifted my foot. It wasn't voluntary. It was that feeling when you're lying in bed and you think about something under it, and your heel leaves the sheet on its own. I set my foot down quick and light, like I wouldn't be noticed if I didn't make it heavy. "Don't step on a name," I said. I don't know why. There weren't names up there, only on the brass plaques by the sidewalk, but I heard the hoodie man in my head and something in me took orders. We got to the bottom of the hill. The couple on the bench was gone. The dog walker was gone. The path lights hummed. Luis pulled at his harness like it was choking him and the phone slipped. It hit the ground, bounced into the grass beyond the path and slid a foot, lens down. I told you the line between normal and not normal comes fast. There it was. The phone was 6 inches off the concrete and I could not make my shoe leave it. The grass was household clean. No trash, no bare dirt. It was exactly the kind of grass you step into without thinking. My brain had never met a piece of landscaping that made my legs shake, but I could not step off the path. "I'll get it," Maya said. "No," I said. "It's not even inside the fence," she said. "It's just grass." "Ribs," I said, and then I hated myself. The shape at the top of the hill leaned forward a degree. Not moved, leaned. Like a figure in a painting you realize is looking at you. Luis whispered. 3 minutes, because he is the worst timekeeper the world has ever produced. "Use the quarter," Maya said suddenly. She held hers up like an offering. He said exact change. "Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like a toll to cross the grass," Luis said. "Or for safe passage," she said, not joking. He dug in his pocket. He had the nickel he took earlier and 1 quarter. The quarter he dropped was still standing on its edge like a patient trick. He looked at his phone in the grass, then at the quarter and the nickel in his hand, and I watched him do the math only he could see. 3, he said, and placed the nickel on the concrete at the very edge of the path. He balanced the quarter on its edge beside it, like he was trying to teach it the magic trick the other one knew. "Luis," I said, a warning and a plea. He reached his hand off the path, not stepping, just leaning. His fingers brushed the case. People say you can feel it when a magnet finds its seat against metal. It's a small click, a relief. This was the opposite. His hand hit the phone and fell through the space between it and the grass like the ground had opened an inch. He jerked back with a sharp breath. His palm was fine. It was red where he'd hit the case, but he looked up with an expression that makes my chest hurt when I think about it. Surprised and scared and guilty, like a kid who almost broke something sacred. The quarter he'd set on its edge toppled. It didn't lie flat. It slid toward the phone, dragging the nickel with it, like both were being pulled by a slow drain. They stopped against the edge of the phone and stayed there as if the grass held them. 1 minute, he said. He said it to convince himself the world was still measured. Leave it, I said again. He didn't. He took his last quarter from his pocket, and now his hand was shaking. He set it dead center over a brass plaque embedded in the sidewalk. I don't know whose name it was. The letters were worn by souls. The quarter sat there, bright against the dull metal. He put both hands at his sides as if to show someone he wasn't hiding any tricks, and he stepped off the concrete. He didn't fall through. Nothing dramatic happened. He bent his knees, reached, and closed his hand on the phone. The grass made a papery sound under his jeans. He stood and he was himself holding his phone. He gave a little laugh that was too loud on purpose. See? He said. The papery sound didn't stop. It collected. It multiplied. Dry leaves being shuffled, pages being turned in 1,000 tight fists. It came from under the grass in all directions and met under his shoes. Back, Maya said, and reached for him. He took one step. It was like stepping into a puddle of air. His foot sank a fraction. He yanked it free with a ripping sound that came from 10 inches down. No hole showed where he'd stepped. The grass lay flat and then sprang up in slow motion. He took another step and sank again, the exact same fraction, the exact same grip under the sole. Don't step on a name, I said again, because my brain was broken and clinging to the only instruction it trusted. There were no names to step on in the grass, so I moved. I took a quarter from Maya's open palm, I set it on the brass plaque with the other, and I stepped off the path. The air felt like crowded shelves. I put my foot down carefully and it held. My heel made a thunk like it had touched wood. I reached for Luis with both hands and he put his weight through my shoulders. Maya grabbed his jacket from the other side. Together we pulled. I don't remember what I said. I remember the smell. Not rot paper, dust, dried flowers that were carried for a long time and dropped. The sound became a chorus. Not voices. The sound of counting. Not numbers. The beats between numbers. As if a hand was tapping shallow boxes from the inside. We got him back onto the concrete. He staggered into the fence and grabbed the metal slats like they were the only real thing left. The shape at the top of the hill leaned another degree. I could not see its face because there wasn't a face to see. What I could see, just for a fraction, was the outline of a hand where its ribs should be, fingers long and too many, pressing outward as if to turn itself inside out and reach. We walked. We didn't run because something mean in the air would have liked that, but we walked fast. We followed the line of the fence, then the sidewalk, then the brass plaques that made a path if you knew how to look at them. We stayed off the names. I don't know if that mattered, but it felt like it mattered more than anything I'd ever done. At the corner near the school, a security car pulled up slow. The window rolled down. The guard inside had a sleepy face and an open can of something with an energy logo. He nodded like he knew us, like he'd known everyone who had ever done this. Park's closed, he said. We're leaving, Maya said. Her voice shook like a string that had been plucked and hadn't found the center again. Good, the guard said. He looked at Luis's chest rig at the red light. You don't want to film up here past midnight. Why? Luis asked, genuine. The guard didn't answer. He looked at the quarter on the plaque nearest his tire. It wasn't ours. It was old and dark and dented. He nodded at it like you nod at a small child passing by. Some people pay, he said. Some people count. I just drive around. We didn't sleep. Not right away. Maya and I crashed at my place because I didn't trust the empty of my own apartment, and I think she didn't trust her walls either. Luis texted at 1:30 a.m. Bro, the footage is weird. Then, you see that? Then nothing for 5 minutes. Then, battery dropped from 60 to 1 in like 30 seconds. Then a picture, not a still from the video. A picture his phone had taken on its own, he said. But that's not possible. It was the three of us standing at the bottom of the hill looking up. It was from behind and above, like a person on stilts had stood behind us. The shape at the top wasn't in the picture, but there was a long line down the center like a scratch had been made on the lens from the inside. I didn't sleep because of the second picture, It was the quarter he'd left on the plaque. The focus was so sharp you could see the thin shadow of the head, the way the metal was rubbed smooth at the edges by shoes. In the bottom arc, a reflection. Not a person, not a tree. 5 long marks like thin bones pressed to metal from underneath, the shape of a hand built wrong. We tried to be normal the next day. Luis wanted to meet up to go through the footage, but Maya said no. She said it before he finished asking. She didn't say curse. She didn't say attachment. She said, enough, like she was putting a lid on water that wants to boil. That was months ago. I didn't go back. I didn't look at the footage except for the pictures he sent, and I stopped opening his texts after a while because every third one was him at some other place he shouldn't be, holding his camera up like a shield against the things that look back. 2 weeks later, Maya called me during her lunch break from the school where she works. She was crying, but trying to sound like she wasn't. Walk with me, she said. She meant on the phone. She meant she needed a human voice in her ear while she moved from one place to another. I put my shoes on and went outside too. We walked separately together. She said she'd been at the grocery store, and when she came out, there was a brass shimmer near the crosswalk. She thought it was trash. It was a quarter, balanced on its edge on the lip of the curb.
She didn't touch it.
She walked around. But later at home on her doormat, there was another quarter, not balanced, flat, dent on the edge. She left it there. The next morning it was gone. Do we pay? She said, is that what this is? Do we pay to get our names back? What names? I said, dumb. Listen, she said, and her breath twitched. When I walk by the plaques now, I hear it. Not the count. Something else, like when you scrape a pencil over a page with writing on it and you can read the indentations from the last thing somebody wrote. What do you hear? I asked. She didn't answer. The call crackled like a radio turning away from a station for a second and then coming back. Never mind, she said. I don't want to say it out loud. Luis stopped posting for a while after that. Then he posted a rooftop video in LA, and I felt relief that was a little ugly. I like the idea of him on roofs. Ground is complicated now. I haven't been back to Old Town at night, but I go near there for work sometimes. When I do, I walk the edge of the park in the daylight. People are always there. Dogs, kids, joggers. A woman practicing a speech out loud with her earbuds in. They step between the plaques without knowing. They set their grocery bags on names. A man in a hat spreads a blanket over 3 people who died in the 1880s and takes a nap. I pass by and keep my feet on the concrete. I don't step on the names. I think that matters. I don't know what happens if you do. I don't know what the count reaches during certain nights, or what happens when the numbers match something they want. One afternoon in July, hot enough to make the air look like a rumor, I walked past a plaque I hadn't seen before. That happens. They restore them sometimes, or you just notice because the ground shifts and the light changes. This one was near the corner where the guard car had idled. It was bright, newer than the others, not shiny but cleaner, like it had been polished on purpose. I looked down and felt my throat go tight. The name on it wasn't mine. It wasn't Maya's. It was a last name close enough to mine that if you read fast, your brain would accept it. The date was wrong for me. It was 100 years too early. But a thought rooted anyway, a seed that didn't care about years. You don't step on a name, I thought, because names are doors. I stood there too long. A kid on a scooter drifted around me, annoyed. A couple holding hands squinted up at the hill as if they were trying to remember where they'd seen it before. The world was fine. The world was daylight and errands and someone's radio playing a song from last summer through an open car window. I felt stupid, then angry, then scared. And then I felt the urge to prove to myself that I wasn't under any glass bowl, that I wasn't ruled by a story, that I was a person in a city on a Tuesday. I lifted my foot. It hung there above the brass for a beat. The sole of my shoe swung the way a pendulum decides time. I set it down beside the plaque on the concrete, not on it. I'm not brave. I'm not the person who pretends to be and makes a show of it. I walked on and I didn't look back, and I told myself that was strength. When I got home, there was a quarter on my doormat. I left it there for 2 days. On the 3rd day, it was gone. That night, I woke up at 3:11 a.m. to the soft scrape of something like paper on paper just on the other side of the wall by my bed. Not like mice, not like a neighbor. The sound came from a small distance in, as if the drywall was a book lying on a table and someone had turned a page inside it. I put my ear to the wall and listened like an idiot. The sound stopped, because that's what it does when you notice it. Then I heard the faintest clink on the wood floor near the door, like a coin being set down with care by fingers that didn't know how to hold it yet. I didn't get up. I didn't check. I lay there and counted the beats between my heartbeats and told myself they were mine. The next morning, there was nothing by the door. I made coffee. I told myself stories. I tried to pick one that would let me live. I haven't gone back at night. I don't plan to. If you do and you won't listen to anyone's advice, bring exact change. Keep your feet off the names. Don't answer if you hear someone say yours, even if the voice is familiar, especially if it is. And if you forget all of that because you're like me and you think rules don't apply to people who are just looking, remember this one image because it's the only thing I have that feels like a warning instead of a threat. Picture a park where the grass is tidy and the light is kind. Picture a hill lined with old stones, some leaning into each other like tired friends. Picture a path that looks like every other path and every other safe place. Then picture a quarter on its edge, trembling. Because something under the ground is counting your steps and wants to know if you'll pay to keep walking with the living, while the living keep walking by. I don't care if anyone believes me. I'm writing this because I need to sleep again, and I can't until I put it somewhere other than my head. I know how this sounds. I know the Winchester Mystery House is basically a tourist attraction with gift shops and ticket wristbands and a TikTok filter. I've done the flashlight tour like everyone else. I get it, but this didn't happen in the house. It happened behind it. In a corner people don't really talk about. Past the back hedge and the utility shed with the faded, authorized personnel-only sign. There's a pet cemetery back there, and whatever moves through that place isn't a museum trick. This was last October, the week before Halloween. I flew up from LA to San Jose to visit my older sister, Kayla, who had just gone through a messy breakup. We were supposed to distract her. That was the plan. Her roommate Riley invited me to crash on their couch and do fall stuff. Pumpkin patches, cinnamon latte, the whole thing. During brunch, Riley said, "Let's do Winchester House tonight. They have a night tour." Kayla rolled her eyes. "It's just stairs to nowhere and weird doors. I've seen it like 5 times. "Yeah," Riley said, cutting her pancakes, "but you haven't seen the cemetery." "What cemetery?" I asked. Riley looked at us over her fork. "They don't advertise it. There's this pet cemetery on the grounds. Staff talk about it if you ask the right way." Kayla made a face. "That can't be true," "Ask," Riley said. "Or we can find it." I didn't think much about it. I've got the same mix of curiosity and skepticism most people have. I'll watch a scary video on YouTube, then go to bed scrolling comments where everyone explains how it was faked. I figured if there was a cemetery, it'd be some kitschy thing from the 1970s. A few chipped headstones with names like Fluffy. Good for a date night shiver. We booked tickets for the evening flashlight tour anyway. It was one of those cold Bay Area nights where the air seems to have a wet edge to it. The house looked like a cardboard cutout against a black sky, with all those gables and windows crowding each other. A group of about 20 of us gathered near the entrance. Teenagers in hoodies, a couple wearing matching beanies, an older man who kept rubbing his hands together even though he had gloves on. Our guide's name was Marco. He had the voice of someone who'd memorized a lot of stories and knew exactly when to pause. We walked through rooms built on top of rooms, staircases that rose to blank walls, doors that opened into nothing. I tried to feel creeped out like everyone else, but the squeak of rubber soles and the beam of 20 flashlights washed the fear out of it. Even Kayla started to soften. She whispered, "Okay, it is cool in a weird way." During a break in the tour, I asked Marco if there really was a pet cemetery on the grounds. He gave me this dry little smile and shrugged like he didn't want to get in trouble. "There is a small animal burial area behind maintenance," he said quietly. "It's not part of the tour. We ask guests to stick to the route." "Is it original?" I asked. "Some of it," he said. "Some markers are newer. Not everything is a Victorian relic. People keep loving things even after old stories end." He moved on. I should have let it go, but the way he said some of it snagged in me. We finished around 10. The group spilled out toward the gift shop lights and the smell of hot chocolate. Kayla ran her hands under the heat lamps and said, "Okay, cemetery time." She said it like a joke, but there was that twitch in her mouth I recognized. She wanted to be braver than she felt, which is Kayla in a sentence. Riley pointed across the lawn. If we're doing this, we can't be obvious. There's a path around the back. I don't know if we looked suspicious, but no one stopped us. We moved past the rose bushes and a white gazebo. The crowd noise thinned. I kept hearing metal clink somewhere, like tools being shifted. The lights of the main house made the sky look orange. Back behind a high hedge, a chain-link gate blocked a narrow service road. There was a lock looped through it, but someone had left the gate nestled against the post like they hadn't snapped it fully shut. A "No guests beyond this point" sign leaned sideways. Kayla hesitated. "This is dumb." "We're just looking," Riley said. She pushed at the gate. It squealed. We slipped through. The service road was lined with hedges and low, dark buildings with flat roofs. Maintenance, storage, maybe staff offices. The smell changed. It wasn't roses anymore, more like damp soil and something sweet that had gone off. I clicked my flashlight on and kept the beam low so it wouldn't bounce. The cemetery wasn't big. You'd miss it if you weren't looking. It sat in a rectangle of grass bordered by cypress trees. There were maybe 15 stones, some ankle high, some up to my shin. A few had little carved paws or tiny crosses. A couple were just plaques pressed into the dirt. Someone had left a limp, squeaky toy near one of them. There were fallen leaves everywhere, the big waxy kind that feel like they should have a spine. "It's a real place," Kayla murmured. "Okay, I didn't expect that." We stepped carefully between the stones. Even Riley got quiet. My light followed the edge of a plaque. "Minnie," it said in tiny lettering. 1904, 1911. The dates made my chest feel strange. You picture those years in sepia, but the ground under your feet is the same wet brown as now. A breeze nudged the cypress. The leaves made a soft clicking sound as they rubbed each other. Or at least that's what I told myself. Somewhere behind us, metal clanged. We all jumped. Riley swore and laughed at the same time, but no one said we should go. We spread out instead. Kayla crouched near a stone that had no name left on it, only a curve of worn marble. She touched the top like she was checking the temperature. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" I said. She tilted her head. "Like scratching." We held still and listened. I did hear something. A tiny skitter, then another. It sounded like the noise you make when you run your fingernail over a corrugated box. It came from the soil. The hair on my arms lifted. Riley said, "Moles?" in a way that meant please let it be moles. I aimed my light down at the base of the stone. The dirt there was uneven, pocked with shallow depressions the size of a quarter. Some were fresh, edges crisp. Some were filled with leaf shreds. As I watched, the soil near one of the depressions buckled a fraction of an inch, like something pressed up from underneath and then let go. The movement stopped. The dirt lay smooth and dumb again. "Okay," Kayla said, standing. "Okay, that's weird." A shape flashed across the corner of my vision. I swung my light too fast, catching a cypress trunk and then the blank maw between two buildings. For a second I was sure I'd seen something pale move along the far edge of the lawn. Long, low, like a dog running with its body coiled tight. "Did you see that?" I said. "See what?" Riley asked. Before I could answer, a single bark cracked the air. It was close, sharp enough to bounce around the buildings. Then another. It didn't echo like metal. It sounded like breath behind it, like wet throat. We didn't move. 3 grown adults freezing like kids on a dare. The barking stopped. The quiet after was louder. Kayla whispered, "There are no dogs allowed," it said on the sign. "Could be a neighbor," Riley said, but there was no conviction in it. The scratching started again. Louder. Not one spot this time. All over, little ticks and scrapes across the ground as if rain started falling from under the grass. The dirt around 2 of the stones thinned and fell away into a faint rim. I don't know the line between being brave and being stupid. I stepped closer. "Don't," Kayla said. "I just want to see if it's—" A dark streak shot past my feet, too fast for my brain to parse. Then another. I heard a low growl right at ankle level, the kind a dog makes when it's deciding whether to commit. I scrambled back, almost stepped on a stone, windmill-armed. My flashlight beam slashed over the grass. For a second I caught the shape of a dog, but all wrong. No fur detail, no texture, just the outline of it in a color that wasn't a color. Like when you stare at the sun too long and you see the ghost of a circle after you blink. Its eyes were white. Not glowing like a cartoon, but white the way a reflection is white when it catches a light exactly, except there was nothing to reflect. "Let's go," Kayla said, voice breaking. Seriously, let's go. We backed toward the service road. My beam jerked. Everywhere it landed, something looked like it wanted to be a dog when the light hit it. A curve of shadow, an arc of ribs, legs that were there and not there. They circled us without sound, except for the scratch of nails I couldn't see. I remember the smell most vividly. Not wet dog, not rot. Warm dirt and carpet after a long afternoon nap. The scent of an animal that just left the room. "Hey!" someone yelled. The path flooded with stronger light. A security guard stood there, flashlight raised. He was older, with a beige jacket zipped to his chin. He looked less angry than scared. "You can't be back here," he said. "Tour's over. This area is closed. We're leaving," Riley said right away. "We're sorry." As he stepped forward, the circle around us thinned like smoke. I could feel it even if I couldn't see it. Pressure letting go. The guard's light cut across the grass, slow and methodical, as if he was trying not to move too fast for anything that didn't want to be seen. "I know you're sorry," he said. "Keep walking." He escorted us through the gate and shut it after. The little lock snapped this time. He gave us the speech you give kids who jumped a fence to swim. "No trespassing. The grounds are dangerous at night. We have tools and equipment out." His eyes kept flicking past us to the lawn. When he looked at me, he looked too long, like he wanted to make sure I understood something I couldn't say aloud in front of the other guests. Riley offered to show him our tickets, but he shook his head. "Just go," he said. We walked back to the parking lot without talking. The people leaving the gift shop looked like paper cutouts. They were laughing, buzzing. Our footsteps made that crunchy noise on gravel that sounds like eating. In the car, Kayla shut all the doors and locked them and didn't start the engine for a minute. "What did we just see?" she asked. Riley stared out the windshield. "Dogs," she said finally. "Not dogs," Kayla said too fast. "Not normal dogs," I said. "Things like dogs." No one argued with that. That should have been the end of it. We should have gone home, eaten pizza, made jokes to dilute the fear. But the house had other plans for me. I dreamed that night. Not a nightmare exactly. Just a series of images that didn't feel like mine. A wide-back lawn in daylight, crisp with morning. A woman in a long dark dress kneeling to place a small bouquet at a stone so tiny it looked like a toy. A short-haired dog with a serious face tearing around an apple tree, tongue out. A gardener leaning on a rake watching. The dog wasn't spectral in the dream. He was the exact solid weight of a real dog, right down to the sound of his claws on a wood patio and the way he blew air out his lips when he rested his head on someone's knee. When I woke up, my throat hurt like I'd been trying not to cough. And there was dirt under my nails. Actual dirt, packed half-moons. Kayla noticed at breakfast. She didn't say anything. She just looked at my hands and put the coffee down slow. "I'm going back," I said. I didn't plan to say it. "Absolutely not," she said. "No, hard no. I just want to look in daylight," I said. "See if there are burrow holes, any explanation. I need to know." Riley had dark circles under her eyes. "If you're going, I'm not going with you," she said, and then added, "Don't go alone." Kayla stared at me for a long time and then said, "Fine, we go together. In the afternoon. We're not sneaking. We'll ask at the desk. If they say no, we take no." We went before lunch. I told myself the daylight would flatten everything into boring. The woman at the ticket counter was different from the night before. Younger, with a nose ring and a patient smile. When I asked about the pet cemetery, her smile shifted. "Not fake, but careful. It's not open to the public," she said, "but you can see it from the far path if you stay behind the barrier. Please don't enter the area." "Is it original?" I asked because that was the question that haunted me. She folded her hands. "Some markers are original. Some are memorials added later by staff. The grounds have had animal companions over time." "The scratching," I started, then felt stupid. "I mean, are there gophers?" She blinked. "It's a garden," she said finally, as if that was an answer to everything. We walked the path she indicated, around the back of the hedge, past a small greenhouse with fog on the glass. I expected to see that rectangle of stones in clear daylight and feel dumb about last night, but from the path you could only catch the edge of it through the cypress trunks. The shadows there were heavier than they should have been at noon. I saw the marker that had said Minnie. The name looked different. The letters were there, but my brain wouldn't hold them steady. Like they'd been written in water and someone breathed on them. "Do you hear that?" Kayla asked, her voice so calm it made me tense. I listened. The scratching was back, light and intermittent, like rain ticking off and on. It sounded exactly like last night. Only this time it didn't stop when other people walked by. 2 kids ran down the path chasing each other, laughing. Their footsteps landed on the same ground that was making that noise and they didn't hear it. "Okay," Kayla said. "We're done. We're going to get sandwiches." I should have listened, but I had that itch that takes over, where not knowing hurts more than being afraid. I told them I needed the bathroom and I would meet them at the cafe by the ticket booth. I didn't go to the bathroom. I circled the hedge again. The chain-link gate was locked now, with the lock actually engaged, but the fence didn't run all the way to the wall. Someone had left a gap where the cypress roots had buckled the ground. I slipped through sideways like a kid dodging under bleachers. I hate myself a little for that, even now. The cemetery looked smaller in daylight. That should have helped. It didn't. The wind was calm, but every leaf on those trees was moving a little, like something stood under them, breathing. I walked to the stone we'd seen last night, the one with the new-looking indentations. I shined my phone light on the ground even though it was noon. The soil was smooth. Then it flexed. It wasn't a burrow opening. It was like a tiny pulse in the dirt, a beat. Once, twice, I thought of a dog dreaming and its paws twitching. "Hey," someone shouted. It was the guard from last night. Same jacket, same tired eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked like he'd been waiting for me to do this exact thing. "I'm sorry," I said, hands up. "I just wanted to—" He shook his head. "Nope," he said. "You don't want to. Not here. I need to know what we saw," I said. "I can't stop thinking about it." "What are they?" He watched my face like something fragile might crack there. For a second, I thought he was going to tell me I was ridiculous, that it was lights and shadows and animal dens. Instead, he looked at the ground between us and said, "They were good. That's all that matters." He gestured for me to follow him out. I hesitated, then pointed at the plaque near my feet. "Minnie," I read aloud. The guard closed his eyes. "Don't say their names," he said quietly. "Why?" I asked. He opened his eyes again, and now they weren't tired. They were hard. "Because if you call a good dog," he said, "a good dog comes." I can't explain why that was the thing that chilled me more than anything else. Maybe because of how simple it was. I left. I squeezed through the gap, hands shaking, and found Kayla and Riley arguing soft and fierce near the cafe. Kayla was saying, "You know him. You know he went?" And Riley was saying, "We should get staff. We didn't stay for sandwiches. If this were just about a spooky night and a creepy staff guy, I wouldn't be writing." Weeks went by. I went home. I tried not to think about it. But small things began to happen. Nothing dramatic. No apparitions. I'd come home from work and find hair on the couch cushion that wasn't from any living dog. Not hair, even. Indentations in the throw pillow like a head had rested there for a long time. I'd hear the light tick-tick of nails on my apartment floor when my upstairs neighbor wasn't home. My rug would have a half-moon dent where the edge had been nudged back with a snout. A shadow would shorten the light under my door and then go, as if something had stood there listening until it decided I was okay. This will sound insane. It's the part that makes me question my own mind most. But sometimes when I got out of the shower and the mirror was fogged, my hand would come up to wipe it without me thinking, and I'd see just for a second. The streaks resolve into a pattern like prints, 4 oval pads and a smaller heel. Then the fog thinned and they were nothing but uneven wipes again. It didn't feel malevolent. It felt like being watched by something protective and restless. And when I lay in bed and the city noise settled, I heard it again, that little scrape in the wall, that slow, patient scratching in the dark, like something digging through dreams. Kayla had her own version down in San Jose. She called me 3 weeks after and said she kept finding her old college sweatshirt on the floor in the same spot by the bed, as if someone had dragged it there to sleep on. Riley swore she heard panting on the stairs at night. Not scary panting, just the sound of an animal taking the steps with you. Happy. Both of them laughed when they told me, because the alternative was not laughing at all. Maybe they were ours for a while, the ones from the cemetery. Maybe they followed the names we almost said. Maybe we carried the smell of that soil home on our shoes and that's how they tracked us. When I told that to Kayla, she said, "That's not how ghosts work." And then, after a beat, "Probably." I didn't go back to Winchester. I don't plan to. The last thing I want to do is pull whatever thin thread holds that place to itself. But sometimes the world pulls you anyway. In March, I was walking home from the bus in the rain. It was late. The street lamps made everything look like it was underwater. I turned onto my block and stopped. There, halfway down the sidewalk, where the storm drains whistle when it floods, was a dog. Medium-sized, short hair, plastered flat by the rain. Serious face. The kind of face you'd trust with a secret. I did not call to him. My mouth opened and nothing came out. He didn't look at me exactly. He looked at that space beside me that you look at when you're remembering someone. His eyes were the white of reflected light and also just eyes. A car hissed past. He didn't flinch. He trotted ahead 3 houses, then turned and waited, ears angled. I followed because of course I did. He led me to my building. He stood at the bottom step and shook water in that full-body shiver, except no water flew. He put one paw on the step. Then he was gone. Not vanished, just nothing stood there anymore. I went upstairs shaking, a good dog shaking the cold off after a run. I locked the door twice. I sat on the floor by my bed and cried harder than I have since I was a kid. Not because I was scared. Because something had walked me home in the rain. I can hear you thinking it. The boring explanations. I know, stray animal, tired eyes in the dark, weird mind tricks. And you might be right. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I wanted something to follow me so I wouldn't be alone. But if you go to the Winchester Mystery House, and if you wander too far behind the hedges, and if you see that small rectangle of ground tucked under the cypress, please don't say their names out loud. Even if you are the kind of person who doesn't believe. And if later you wake up with dirt under your nails or a sweatshirt tugged off the chair by your bed, don't kick it away. Leave it. Let the good dog have the soft thing. Sometimes, usually around 3 in the morning, the scratching gets louder. Not frantic, steady, like paws running somewhere you can't see. I lie with my eyes open, counting. It starts to sync with my heartbeat. Once I whispered a name. Not Minnie. Another name that came to my tongue like I'd known it a long time. The sound of it felt wrong in the air, like calling someone who doesn't belong to you. The scratching stopped so suddenly the silence popped. After that, I don't say names. I just say softly, "Good boy," or "Good girl," and wait for the slightest weight to press the duvet near my leg. It comes almost every time now. The dent is not big. The warmth is not warmth. Still, I move my hand there and feel the air thicken like a breath held close. I told Kayla I was writing this and she said, "Don't put the location. People will go, but people already go. Everyone knows about the house." I think the worst part is that the house is a distraction. 1,000 doors to keep you from seeing the small place behind it, where good animals wait without understanding time. If I'm telling this, it's not to send you there. It's to warn you that even the kind hauntings are still hauntings. Even the good ones ask for things you don't know you're giving. If you hear barking where there are no dogs, don't bark back. If you hear scratching, don't scratch the wall to answer. If you see eyes shining white without a light to catch, don't take a photo. Don't post it. Don't try to prove it to anyone, just go home. Wash your hands. Check under your nails. Lay a sweatshirt on the floor by your bed and pretend you left it there by accident. Turn off your light. Let the sound of the nails come and go, like rain starting and stopping on a roof. Let it circle you, then settle. And when you walk in the rain at night and it feels like the city is bigger than you and the dark is crowded, listen for paws behind you, keeping pace. If they bring you home safe, say thank you without saying a name. I don't know what haunts that cemetery. I don't think it's the same energy that leans in the odd-angled doorways of the mansion. It's gentler, older, the kind of thing that sits beside a chair and waits for someone who isn't coming back. Maybe grief is its own architecture, and maybe it spills into the ground and makes new rooms we can't see. If I'm right, and if they follow, it's because we looked where we shouldn't and we listened, and we heard them asking in the only way they can to be remembered. Last night I dreamed the lawn again. Bright morning, a woman kneels, bouquet in hand. The serious dog runs in a wide circle, joyful, ears pinned back. He passes me once, twice, 3 times, then slows and trots up and leans his chest against my shins the way dogs do when they pick you as theirs for a minute. I feel nothing. No weight, no pressure, but I know what the gesture means. When I wake, the sweatshirt is on the floor. The duvet has that small dent by my leg. The air smells like clean fur that isn't there. Outside, somewhere far off, a single bark cracks the night and leaves it ringing. And then the house is quiet enough for me to hear the soft, patient sound of nails on the floorboards, circling once, twice, settling by the door. I say nothing. I fall asleep. If you go, don't call them. If they come, don't own them. And if you ever find yourself behind a hedge in San Jose, past a service road and a sign someone forgot to rehang, and you feel the dirt move with a pulse you can't explain, step back. Let the good dogs rest. They want to follow. They will if you let them. That's the scariest part. Not teeth. Not growls. Not glowing eyes. Love that doesn't know how to stop even when it should. I don't post much, so I don't really know how to start this without sounding dramatic. I'm not trying to sell a story. I just want it out of my head. If you live near Ventura, you've probably heard something about the old burials along the beach and the pier. How the graves were swallowed by storms. How some headstones got hauled inland and some just disappeared. I always thought that was the kind of local history tour guides throw in, to give a place texture. Lately, I can't make myself walk that stretch of sand without checking behind me every 10 steps. You'll think I'm being superstitious. I thought that too once. This happened last fall over 2 nights the week before Halloween. I was in Ventura to help my sister, Lena, move out of the apartment she shared with her ex. She didn't want to be there alone. I took time off work, flew into Burbank and grabbed a rental car that smelled like someone tried to cover cigarettes with vanilla spray. By the time I reached the coast, it was late afternoon, the marine layer already pressing down on everything, lighting the ocean this flat, pewter color. Lena insisted we do one last walk on the beach before we started packing, like we were going to say goodbye to the view she wouldn't have anymore. We parked near the pier. Wind pushed the smell of salt and kelp into our faces, and gulls looped in slow, complaining arcs over the railings. Everything creaked. The boards of the pier, the signposts, even the loose nails in the benches, as if the place was one big instrument trying to tune itself. I remember how empty it felt. A couple walking their dog, a fisherman in a sun-bleached hoodie watching the water with his hands tucked into his sleeves. That was it. On the sand, the fog drifted in sheets and then pulled back again. I could just make out the silhouettes of the dunes to the south. Last time, Lena said, hooking her arm in mine. Promise we can do this without you lecturing me about moving inland. I'll refrain, I said. Unless a rogue wave carries you off, then we're done with coastal living forever. She bumped my shoulder, laughing. She's younger than me by 3 years. Same dark hair and stubborn jaw our mother swears we got from the Irish side. We're not sentimental people, but moving was stirring her up. That's why I didn't push back when she suggested we walk farther than usual, down toward the spot where the sand is softer and the sea feels closer. I don't know when the conversation shifted. 1 minute we were joking about how we'd split up our childhood books so we wouldn't fight about them at Thanksgiving. The next we were telling stories we'd heard growing up about the beach burying bodies after storms, and the city moving remains when they could. I remembered a substitute teacher in 4th grade who told us to be polite to the ocean because it kept receipts. Lena brought up a rumor about a shipwreck that was never fully recovered. We weren't scaring each other on purpose. It was more like the fog made everything feel quiet enough to hear your own thoughts echo, and the echoes came back a shade darker. The first odd thing was small. I bent to tie my shoe and noticed a smooth, pale shape pressed into the wet sand near the line of foam. Not shell smooth, not plastic. A curve like a crescent moon. For half a second I thought it was a piece of whale vertebra, because I follow a lot of beachcombing accounts, and every once in a while, someone finds something wild. I nudged it with my toe. The sand softened and the shape rolled, showing a hole in the middle. It took me a blink too long to recognize what it really was. A human tooth. A molar, maybe. No gold, nothing fancy. Just clean white and strange as a pearl. That's gross, Lena said. Don't touch it. I didn't, I lied, even though I had. The truth prickled up my skin like cold air. We walked on, making dumb jokes to shake it off. The fog thickened, then thinned at our backs like doors opening and closing. The beach was quieter than it should have been. No kids, no volleyball. No guys blasting music out of portable speakers. I started to notice the sand. Not the part under our feet, but the stretch closer to the waterline. Every time the waves slid in and erased a layer, a fresh set of ripples would form. That's normal. But in places the ripples didn't look like wind patterns or tide fingers. They looked like outlines. Long, narrow human outlines. I stared until my eyes watered. The next wave blurred them out. When the water slipped away, the shapes came back. Not perfect. Not like a chalk outline on a sidewalk, but suggestive enough to make my stomach knot. The height of the forms wasn't consistent. One looked small enough to be a kid. Is this a low tide thing? Lena asked, trying to sound casual. She saw them too. I could tell because she wouldn't look straight on. She was monitoring them through the corner of her eye the way you check a suspicious person on the bus. Probably, I said. Sand settles weird. We went quiet again. The emptiness of the pier behind us felt heavier, as if everyone had decided to go home without telling us. The fisherman I'd seen earlier was now closer, lugging a plastic bucket, walking with a limp that bent him toward the sea. When he got within a few yards, he slowed, looking us over the way locals sometimes evaluate if you're a tourist they need to rescue from your own enthusiasm. You two shouldn't be down this far after dark, he said. His voice wasn't mean. It was as gentle as a warning can be. It's not dark, I said automatically and felt stupid. The fog made it twilight at 4. It will be, he said, and the tide's weird this week. Undertow's got a memory. He side-eyed the water. People step out and step wrong and it keeps the step. Lena squeezed my arm. We're heading back. Good, he said, but he didn't leave. He walked closer to the foam line and scanned the sand. His eyes went flat and careful, the way someone looks for a lost ring. He paused over the place where I'd seen the outlines. The next wave washed in. He didn't move. The water climbed over his boots and then up his shins. He stood there and counted under his breath. When it slid away, he crouched and touched 2 fingers to the sand like he was feeling for a heartbeat. Sir, I said, because some part of me was terrified that he was about to collapse. He glanced up. You found a tooth? I blinked. What? It's a popular week for teeth, he said dryly. They come in batches. He stood, wiped his hands on his hoodie, and nodded toward the pier. I've been coming out here since I was a kid. Every few years, something shifts under there. The old stones move. The bones get restless. City comes and pretends it's driftwood. People think fish bring in the pieces. It's not fish. He was telling us a ghost story in broad daylight at a public beach, and if I'd been in any other mood, I would have laughed it off. But the hairs on my arms were standing up even under my jacket. What is it then? I asked because some instinct made me want rules. If there was a way to avoid this, I wanted to know it. The tide, he said. The tide remembers roads we don't. He walked away without another word, leaving twin tracks that the next wave smoothed down. I noticed something only when he was almost gone. Where his boots should have left deep prints in the wet sand right by the water, there were none. Just a flat, glossy surface like poured cement. Farther up where the sand was drier, his footprints were normal. Closer to the sea, they vanished mid-step. Okay, Lena said tightly when he was out of earshot. We're going back now. We did. We didn't talk again until we were on the pier, where the wood felt blessedly solid and boring. We put coins into the old binocular viewer and pretended to be tourists for 5 minutes. That night, we changed plan and packed until midnight to keep our minds busy. We ate pizza on paper plates in a living room, half full of taped-up boxes, and made fun of a show where a couple looked for a dream house and complained about how small the closets were. In the quiet after midnight, when the TV glow was the only light, the apartment felt like a hotel room you've stayed in too long. I slept on the couch. I woke up around 3 to a faint scraping sound that I told myself was a branch against the window. There were no trees near that window. I lay still and listened until my ears mapped the apartment. Fridge hum. The bathroom fan someone had left on. That scrape again. Softer now, like fingernails dragging across cardboard. It stopped when I sat up. I stared at the boxes in the shadows and imagined a mouse. Then I pictured the fisherman's boots leaving no prints near the foam and prayed to a god I never remember during daytime. Morning made everything ridiculous. Sun burned the fog off by 9. We grabbed coffee at a place where everyone knew Lena's order. Like we could stitch the normal back together by being part of a routine. She needed to grab some documents from her car, which was street parked 2 blocks away. So we walked out with paper cups and too much confidence. A contractor's truck trundled by with lumber stacked in the bed, and his radio played a cheerful Spanish pop song. Across the street, kids waited for a bus. Normal. Lena stopped dead a few steps from her car. "Don't freak out," she said. My stomach dropped before I saw what she meant. Leaning against her front tire, as if someone had propped it there carefully, was a small white object, a tooth. The same shape and size as the one on the beach. A second one had been tucked up right into the space between the tire and the curb, like chalk waiting to be picked up. My mouth went dry. Maybe kids? Kids putting human teeth against my wheel? Lena said too loud. A woman on the sidewalk glanced over. Lena blew out air and tried again, softer. Or a neighbor pulling a prank. Maybe they're fake. They're not, I said, because I couldn't help it. I lifted the tooth and flipped it in my palm. The root was worn smooth as if by water. It was cold in a way that went deeper than the morning air. It felt like holding a coin you know is counterfeit, but which still has weight and metal. Smell? Lena took it from me and set both teeth gently in the center of the hood like she was offering them back to whoever wanted them. Okay, she said. No more beach. We did what people do when the edges of their world fray. We made a plan. We'd finish packing by early afternoon, pick up the U-Haul and drive her stuff to a storage unit a few miles inland. We'd sleep at a friend's place in Santa Paula. We'd loop back the next day for a final pass in the Keys, then I'd head home. We didn't say it, but this is the part when you act more normal than usual. Like pretending hard enough might reset whatever switch you accidentally brushed. By noon, the sky had changed. The morning's bright wash muted back to gray. The forecast said the fog would roll in early. By 2, the air tasted like a penny under your tongue. We stomped through tasks faster and faster as if speed could outrun weather. I kept checking the window for no good reason. When the U-Haul was half loaded, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again with a text. Watch the tide. No punctuation. No name. I felt like someone had slipped a pebble onto my tongue. I typed back, "Who is this?" The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. Then don't let it take more. More? Before I could answer, another text came through. This one from a number I recognized. Sam, one of Lena's friends who worked nights at a bar near the harbor. You two okay? Weird fog on the shore. If you need help, call me. Why would Sam text me about fog? I asked. Everybody's talking about it, Lena said, barely glancing at my screen. The pier cam looks creepy right now. Look. She brought up a live feed locals used to check surf conditions. The image was flat gray and darker gray. The pier was a black line fading to nothing. Occasionally, a pale shape moved at the waterline. It could have been mist. It could have been people. None of the shapes cast visible shadows. We can finish in an hour, I said. I didn't believe it. We finished in 2. By then, the light felt like it does during an eclipse. That isn't poetic. Your body knows when the sky is wrong. Every time I went down the stairs to the truck, I felt a tiny pressure change in my ears, like riding a slow elevator. The boxes made faint rasping sounds when I stacked them, like cardboard against cardboard, but not quite. When we locked the apartment door behind us, Lena took my hand without making a joke about how cheesy we were, and we jogged down to the truck like kids late for curfew. I'd like to say I made the right choice next, but I'm still not sure. We could have driven inland. We could have gone straight to the storage unit and let the coast handle itself. Instead, I turned the truck toward the pier for one last pass. I told myself I wanted to drop off the keys at the leasing office by the beach because it was closer. That was true. It was also true that I wanted to look at the water and prove it was just weather, just a camera glitch, just the kind of freak day the ocean throws at you and then forgets, as if it forgets anything. By the time we parked near the pier, the fog was a wall. The truck's headlights through a white tunnel 2 feet long. Sound did strange things. A seagull and a siren and a kid yelling became the same stretched-out noise. The pier creaked louder than yesterday, the boards popping softly under their own swelling and shrinking. There were more people than I expected. A cluster of surfers in hoodies arguing about the break, a couple of older men in bright windbreakers with binoculars, and a city worker in a high-visibility vest standing with his hands on his hips like he was on a smoke break from a job nobody else saw. Everyone avoided looking directly at the water. We got out. The air felt wet enough to chew. I swallowed and thought of old churches on the East Coast, damp forever. Lena reached for my sleeve. Her fingers were cold. Just a minute, I said, and we walked to the railing where the pier meets the sand. I knew even before I looked that the tides were wrong. The water wasn't coming in steady. It was pulsing, like a breath held and released by someone trying to be quiet. Each time the tide slid out, the sand seemed to hesitate before relaxing, the way a muscle does after you remove your hand. For a few heartbeats, the beach looked like a floor under a thin sheet. The fisherman from the day before was there. He stood a little apart, in the same hoodie as if he'd never left. His eyes flicked toward me, then toward the waterline. A couple of surfers followed his gaze and then looked away too quickly, embarrassed. What is it? Lena whispered. I wanted to say nothing. I wanted to say, let's go. Instead, I said, "Do you see them?" Because in the band of wet sand between the last footprints and the foam, there were figures. Not solid. Not mist either. Paler than fog, finer. As the tide drew back, more appeared. Not by rising up, but by being revealed like faces behind steamed glass when someone wipes a circle clean. They walked along the surf in a slow line, heads turned toward the ocean, then the pier, then the dunes. Every few steps, one would pause as if listening and then keep moving. Their feet didn't make prints. A gull stepped around one figure without noticing it. Only when a figure lifted its head as if sniffing wind did they seem to catch the light. The impression came and went in a single blink. A jaw you could trace with your finger, the hollow of a temple, the suggestion of a collarbone. In the next breath, it was just fog again. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "If you took anything, give it back." "I didn't," I said out loud. "Didn't what?" Lena asked. "Nothing," I said. I didn't finish. Something bumped the underside of the pier. The whole structure shivered. The city worker swore and jogged to a call box. The surfers fell silent. The figures stopped as a group and all turned toward the pilings. This time I saw it clearly, the angle of a chin, the slope of a shoulder. More importantly, I saw where none of the figures were. There was a gap in the line the size and shape of a person, like a missing tooth in a grin. I reached instinctively into my jacket pocket. I knew I hadn't kept the tooth. I had put it down on the hood of Lena's car. And yet my fingers closed around something smooth and hard, and the same wrong temperature as the tooth had been. I pulled it out. It wasn't a tooth. It was a square of polished stone, rounded at the edges from tumbling in sand. The engraved part had worn down, but I could still make out a faint carving, a cross and the top of a name. The only letters left were M-R-I. The rest had been eaten away. I don't know how it got into my pocket. I don't know if the beach gave it to me or if I picked it up without noticing in a moment. My brain refused to record. Lena stared. Another thump under the pier cut her off. The figures turned again as one. I had the fierce animal sense that we were making a mistake by moving perpendicular to them, like cutting across a procession. The square of stone felt heavier by the second, the way some objects seem to gain mass from your attention. The unknown number texted again. "Please." I didn't think. I walked down the steps from the pier to the sand. The city worker shouted, "Hey!" Not now. I kept going. The wet sand sucked at my boots. The air at the waterline felt colder, like something in it was drawing heat out of skin. Lena was right behind me, swearing under her breath the way she does when she's scared. We stopped where the foam reached. The figures were closer than my brain could process. They weren't transparent. That's the detail I keep wanting to get right. They weren't smoke or glass or mirrors. They were thin, like a photo printed on vellum. If I focused on one, it blurred. When I unfocused, it was easier to see them in a group. They were not all the same height. Some were as short as children. One held its head as if it hurt, both hands on temples, and the pose made my eyes sting. I held out the square of stone the way you hold out your hands when you're trying to prove you've got nothing to hide. "I didn't mean to take this," I said. I don't even know how I got it. The water touched my boots and then receded. The figures did not come closer. They did not react at all. "Put it down," Lena whispered. I crouched and set the stone at the edge of where the foam had been. It looked small and stupid and so heavy that my fingers throbbed when I let go. The next wave rolled in, hesitated, then slid around the stone like a tongue tasting. When it receded, the stone wasn't there anymore. The sand didn't look disturbed. It looked ironed. Something changed in the air. The pressure shifted like a lid easing off a pot. The line of figures turned their heads toward the water as if listening to something I couldn't hear. A few began to walk again, away from the pier parallel with the tide. The gap in the line filled. I know how that reads. I know it sounds like I'm projecting. I watched until my vision flickered and my knees ached and I had to blink. And each time I refocused, the gap was smaller. The fisherman came to stand a few feet to my left. He didn't say anything. He watched the sand the way a person watches a sleeping baby, for the rise and fall. After a long minute, he said, "They'll settle." "How do you know?" I asked. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears, thin, like it was having trouble catching. "Because you gave it back," he said simply. "Most people don't." "We didn't take it," Lena said, still shaky with adrenaline. "We found it in her pocket. We don't know how. He shrugged one shoulder. The beach puts things in your hand when it wants to see if you're listening. Some folks bring them home. They end up coming back at night to put them where they belong because they can't sleep, and they walk straight in. His eyes flicked toward the water. The tide keeps the step. We didn't go back onto the pier. We walked slowly to the truck, each step measured. The fog wasn't lifting, but it didn't feel like it was pushing us anymore. On the way past the city worker, I heard him talking into his radio. He used words like subsidence and structural integrity in a bored voice that sounded like habit, like he was required to say those things out loud to make the world stay sensible. "Who texted you?" Lena asked once we were inside the truck with the doors closed and the engine on, and the heater going too high. "I don't know," I said, and I didn't open my phone to check the number because I was afraid I'd find something like my own contact or a string of zeros. It doesn't matter. We drove inland. The farther we got from the water, the less the fog pressed down. By the time we reached the storage unit, the sky was just regular gray. We loaded the boxes fast and without talking. We stayed at Sam's place that night and put on a stupid movie and ate fried food that made my stomach rebel. Every time the movie went quiet between scenes, we all listened without meaning to, as if the quiet might carry a new sound. It didn't. That should be the end. If I were making this up, I would stop there and let you think I learned a neat moral about not taking what isn't yours. But the ocean doesn't care about our arcs. The next morning we went back for the keys like we'd planned, and it was daylight and busy with dog walkers and joggers and kids with sand buckets. The fog had retreated but not gone. It hunkered just past the pier, low and patient. The beach looked normal. No outlines. You could pretend yesterday didn't happen if you wanted to. At her car, tucked under the windshield wiper on the driver's side, was a single strip of damp, sun-bleached cloth. It was the width of a ribbon and the length of a bookmark. The edges were frayed. It took me a second to identify what it reminded me of. Those old funeral ribbons you see in antique stores sometimes, the ones that say remembrance in faded gold. There was no writing on this one, just a faint pattern that might have been a cross or might have been a water stain. There was sand caught in the weave, so fine it looked like dust. "Don't touch it," Lena said automatically. We stared at it like you do a spider you're deciding how to relocate. "We could leave it," I said. "Then someone else will take it," she said, surprising me. Her voice had a new steadiness in it, the kind you get from surviving a thing you didn't know you could. She plucked the ribbon gently with 2 fingers, the way you'd lift a hair from a shirt. It hung limp and heavy. She laid it on the hood. We stood there for a minute, waiting for logic to present itself. Cars went by. A kid squealed at a dog. My phone stayed mercifully silent. "Okay," she said finally. "We'll put it back." "Back where?" I asked, even though I knew. We both looked toward the pier. The fog line had moved closer again, like a person who doesn't want to be obvious about eavesdropping. We walked down to the edge of the sand where yesterday had taught us the rules. We waited for the water to slide in and then back. Lena crouched and placed the ribbon at the exact place where the foam had reached. It sank into the sand as if the beach had a mouth. Not fast, just inevitable. When the next wave came, there was nothing to see. "Do you hear that?" she asked. I shook my head. "What?" "Nothing," she said. "That's what's weird. It feels like the beach is holding its breath, but there's no sound of anyone deciding to let it go." We didn't stay to see if the figures would return. Maybe that would have made everything worse. Maybe the only gift we were going to get was the ability to walk away while we still could. I kept checking my phone all that day, part of me expecting another please. None came. The unknown number didn't show up in my history after that, like it had never been there. I asked Sam later if he had texted about the fog, and he swore he hadn't. He showed me his phone. No sent messages to me in that time frame. He thought I was messing with him. I went home. Lena moved inland. Life got loud again. Traffic and work and the things you can handle with lists. When I close my eyes at night, I still see the gap in that line on the sand and the way it filled. I still feel the square of stone in my pocket, even though I threw that jacket away. Sometimes I wake up and my mouth tastes faintly like pennies. Sometimes I dream about walking on a beach that doesn't leave prints, and even in the dream I know the ocean is watching. 2 weeks ago, on a clear day, I made the mistake of searching old Ventura archives online. I told myself I was looking for comfort. I found a scanned photograph from the 1920s of a small burial ground near the water, most headstones leaning, some already sunk to the knees in sand. A woman stood in the frame holding a ribbon with gold letters I couldn't quite make out. The caption said only, "After the storm." The photo felt thinner than it should have been, as if the paper remembered being wet. I don't have a lesson for you. I won't tell you to stay away from the pier, though I haven't been back and I don't plan to. I will tell you this much. People say the dead are restless because their markers were moved and their names were lost. I don't think that's the whole truth. We lose names all the time and the world doesn't howl for them. It's something else. It's the way we treat the ocean like a trash can with pretty views. It's the way we keep taking, and the shore keeps giving back in pieces until we notice. If you find something pale and smooth at the edge of the tide, if a tooth or a button or a ribbon decides your hand is a good place to be, don't pocket it. Don't make up a story about how you'll keep it safe. You won't. You'll take it home and it will sit on your dresser and chill your room at night. You'll hear a scrape on cardboard even when there aren't any boxes. You'll dream of footsteps that never land. And then, whether you want to or not, you'll come back in the fog and you'll wade in without realizing you've started walking. And the tide will keep the step. I think that's why I'm posting this. Not to ask you to believe me, but to return the last thing I'm still holding on to that isn't mine, the story. I don't know if that counts. I hope it does. If the beach listens, if it's possible to give something back with words, then I'm doing that now. The tide can keep the rest. The names we've lost, the bones no one can place, the ribbons frayed to threads. Let them lay where the water wants them. If you go to Ventura on a foggy night and you see pale shapes walking along the surf, leaving no footprints, don't follow. Don't try to see faces. Don't try to count them. Just step back onto the dry sand and breathe where the air is thicker. And if the sea brings anything to your feet that looks like a piece of a person, put it down gently and step away. You can say please if it helps. I think that more than anything is what I learned. The ocean isn't a thing you fight or a thing you worship. It's a thing you ask permission from, and if you're lucky, a thing that tells you no before it takes more. I don't care if anyone believes me. I'm only writing this because I can't fall asleep without hearing those steps anymore. And I'm hoping if I tell it clean like it really happened, it'll stop looping in my head. This was last fall in Sacramento. I live a few miles south of Broadway, and I'd started doing rideshare at night after my main job cut hours. I'm not big on haunted stuff. I'm practical. I'm the guy who counts the exits when I walk into a place. But you can't live near Old City Cemetery without hearing stories. You hear about the women in black on the dusk tours, how they glide between the angel statues and then vanish. You hear about a gravedigger who quit because he kept hearing boots behind him when he was alone, and when he turned around, there was nobody. You hear the line everyone says about that cemetery: the dead there are patient. They wait. I didn't plan to go. My friend Lena is the reason. She had its local event videos and had to shoot a Halloween series. Cheesy, most haunted stuff for a community channel. She asked me to drive and carry a light kit because her usual guy was sick. She offered gas money and dinner. That's how she gets me. It's an easy gig, she said. We film a tour at Old City, B-roll of headstones, done by 9. I told her, I'm not signing a waiver that lets ghosts break my camera. She laughed and said, there's no waiver, you baby. We went on a Thursday near the end of October. It was one of those California evenings when the heat leaves fast after the sun drops. The sky was thin blue at first, then it went that flat gray that looks like it could turn to silver if you touched it. I parked along the curb by the iron gate. The gate is serious. Black metal. Spear points. You feel it before you step through. There's a low traffic hum from Broadway and the occasional bark from a dog in the neighborhood. But inside the fence, it's like the air changes. The smell shifts to cut grass, damp dirt, even if it hasn't rained. It did that as we walked in. I'll swear to that. There were a dozen people waiting near the office building. Couples. 2 older guys with those lanyard cameras. A teenager with a hoodie up and his mom giving him the "don't embarrass me" look. At the edge of the group stood a man with a white mustache and a green jacket patched at the elbows. He leaned on a rake. He had the posture of someone who never takes both hands off the tool, like it's the only steady thing in his day. That was Walt, though I didn't know his name yet. He watched us without smiling or frowning, just taking measure. Our guide introduced herself as Carla. Short, sturdy, hair in a bun, bright headlamp on her forehand like a miner. She had a laminated badge and a voice that carried without yelling. Welcome to Old City Cemetery, she said. Founded in 1849. We're walking on family plots and pioneer graves, and we'll respect that. If you hear or see anything strange, we keep moving. That's our rule." She waited, let the silence sit in. "Our second rule, no stepping off the path. There's subsidence. Ground settles. You can twist an ankle or worse." Lena nudged me and whispered, "She says that every tour. It's part of the bit." She raised her camera and started recording Carla's intro. I hoisted the light kit. I remember thinking about the way the iron fence shadow fell across the path like ribs. We walked, single file, past a row of Gothic headstones, spires and names worn soft by weather. "You'll hear about a woman in mourning black," Carla said. "Some guests have seen her near the Hamilton plot around dusk. If you do, stay with the group." Someone snorted, a young guy in a beanie. His girlfriend squeezed his arm anyway. "We've got a lot of stories," Carla went on, "but we also have real history. The 1850 cholera epidemic, the Chinese section uprooted for the freeway, soldiers from the Civil War. The dead here are patient. They wait." When someone else says that line out loud, it lands different. It felt like she dropped a pebble into the place itself, and the dirt was quiet while the rings spread out. For the first 20 minutes, it felt like every night tour. Flashlight beams sliding over names, the awkward shuffle of strangers trying not to bump shoulders, cool air pooling in low spots. Lena filmed statues, the way their eyes look down like they're reading your last thought. I got B-roll of the ironwork fences around family plots with rust swirling like orange lace. A breeze moved through and set a few dead leaves skittering across the path. A couple fell from a big sycamore, but not like a cascade. They dropped one at a time, slow, as if something was watching and timed it. We reached the Hamilton plot when the light turned to that exact dusk that isn't day or night. It's when your eyes make up their mind about what to trust. Carla stopped us with a palm up. "Phones away for a second," she said. "I want your eyes adjusted." People pocketed phones, even the teenager reluctantly. Carla turned off her headlamp. She asked us to stand still and listen. No one joked. We listened. At first it was traffic and a train horn faint somewhere else in the city. Then a beat of wind. Then very soft, a scuffing sound behind us, like someone dragging the toe of a boot over gravel. The group turned as one organism. Nothing there. The path behind us was empty. Walt, the mustached man with the rake, was by the older section 100 feet back, leaning on his handle and not moving. I saw him in the last smear of light. He wasn't the sound. That's not how the scuff felt. It felt closer. It felt like someone standing in the space between two of us, right at our backs, trying to find their footing without tapping us. Carla clicked on the headlamp steady. "Some folks hear footsteps back here," she said. A gravedigger named Harold told the same story in the 1920s. He'd be alone, heavy boots behind him. He'd turn and nothing. He lasted 2 months. She smiled, but it was duty, not funny. "We keep moving," she added. She started forward. Some of us went because she went. Some of us went because we didn't want to be the last. Lena shot me a look. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. Not because I fully trusted my ears, but because saying no felt rude. Like telling a house that its floorboards don't creak. I'll fast forward through the part where the group settles back down. We saw the fireman's plot with its metal helmets mounted on stakes, shadow helmets looking like open mouths. We passed ground-level markers that made me pick up my feet a little more. We heard a cat yowl somewhere out near the fence. The teen whispered to his mom, "Can we leave?" And she said, "In a bit." The beanie guy kept squeezing his girlfriend's shoulder, like, "I'll be your anchor." That's what he was trying to say with his hand. At the Monroe Mausoleum, which looks like a small stone chapel with a door of black iron, Carla stopped to tell a story about a family who buried someone twice. The first time, they put him in the wrong vault. There's paperwork from the 1870s. She had a laminated copy in her bag. She held it up, shining her light across it. While she talked, a small shape moved in the corner of my vision. On the left, 2 rows over, someone in dark clothing walked parallel to us, almost unhurried, and then turned between stones. It wasn't startling. It was like seeing a late guest try to catch up to a group. I blinked and didn't see her again. A second later, a woman behind me said too loud, "Did you see?" and then stopped herself. Carla finished the story. She smiled at the woman with an "I know" kind of look and said nothing. Lena whispered, "Got that on camera?" I said, "I didn't pan that way." She frowned and did a slow sweep. "It's fine," she muttered. "We just need mood." We moved on. We didn't talk much. People stayed tighter together. I could feel the space that had been behind me move up in my awareness, like a blind spot you decide to keep an eye on anyway. The wind had a smell then. Not bad, not rot. It was like old water that had been inside something for a long time and now it was out. Here's the part I haven't stopped thinking about. The path dipped and then rose near a big angel statue with a broken wrist. Carla warned us and stepped down, up. I stepped down, up. In that low spot, I felt a dull thump through my shoes like someone 3 steps behind me put their heel down hard. It wasn't sound. It was vibration through soil. I froze and turned my head. No one was close enough to make the ground shake like that. Not on dry Sacramento dirt. And yet something heavy had stepped. Carla noticed me stop. She said, "Lo, you okay?" I said, "Yeah." She studied me a second longer than a guide doing crowd control would, like she was checking whether I was seeing the wrong things or the right ones. We got to the Hamiltons. The legends call it an active spot, but it's just a row of tall headstones with an iron fence around them, and a sycamore that has leaned for 100 years and keeps leaning. Carla let us look for a couple minutes. Lena set up her tripod and rolled. I drifted toward the iron fence because it had that hand-rolled feel to it, the twist pattern you can only make with heat and stubbornness. I rested my knuckles on one of the iron curls. That's when the woman in the black dress appeared. "I'm not dressing this up. I don't need to." She stood across the path 3 graves away. Mid-height, hair tucked up under a little hat. Dark clothes with that old-fashioned stiffness to the fabric. She was turned slightly, looking toward the Hamilton names like a person who arrived late and was trying to catch the end of something private. And she wasn't glowing or floating or any of that. She was just there the way a person is there. 2 people in the group saw her at the same time as me. I know that because 2 different breaths changed sharp. One from the mom, one from the older guy with the lanyard camera. The woman didn't look at us. She stepped not fast, not slow, between 2 markers and went behind an obelisk. I leaned to keep her in sight. She should have appeared on the other side. She didn't. I stepped closer to the fence and the iron was cold under my hands like it had been in shade all day. I glanced at Lena, ready to tell her to swing her camera. She was already doing it. Her face had that work look where she forgets to be afraid and you have to watch for her. The headlamp on Carla's forehead flicked once, twice like a short in the battery. She didn't say keep moving then. She said stay on the path. We watched. We listened. We heard that scuffing sound again, but now it was to our right, on the gravel near the mausoleum. I thought of the gravedigger. Heavy boots. I turned my body all the way, expecting to see Walt because he'd been somewhere back there. He wasn't. The path was empty. The vibration underfoot came right after, like it had in the low spot. A heel, a weight. Not ours. Okay, Carla said, very calm. We're going to walk back toward the office. Nice and slow. No one argued. No one asked for one more ghost. We started down the path we'd come, the group tighter, quiet in a different way. I kept checking my 6 and I kept seeing nothing. But the feeling of something pacing us arrived and did not leave. I don't know how else to say it. The space right behind us felt occupied and it didn't care whether we believed in it or not. We hit a fork where a path curved past the fireman's plot or cut straight toward Monroe's mausoleum and then the gate. Carla took the straight path. The mausoleum had its door closed. Thick iron, crosshatch grill, padlock shiny like it was replaced last week. Lena jogged ahead to get a shot of the group passing. When she reached the door, she flinched and tilted her camera down. "What?" I asked. She shook her head, swallowed, and pointed. I came up beside her. On the stone step, tucked neatly against the door, was a fresh, wet footprint. Not a hiking boot tread or a sneaker. It was the shape of a heel with a blunt edge and a narrow instep, like an old boot with a hard sole. No dirt was pushed over it. No leaf broke the edges. It was like someone had stepped there and lifted their foot a second before Lena raised her lens. Carla joined us, saw it, and for the first time, lost a millimeter of composure. "Don't touch it," she said. "Don't step there. Keep going." We kept going. The group speed walked past the iron door. I did not film the step. I did not take a picture. I don't know why. I wanted out. The air had that feeling of a room no one uses where the window's been closed for months and something in the walls remembers you from last time. We made it to the office. People laughed a little, the sound of "we were brave," that even if we weren't. The teen pulled his hoodie down and said, "Told you." His mom hugged him too quickly. Beanie Guy tried to joke about the boot print, but his girlfriend didn't take his hand. They left fast. Carla took surveys, handed out flyers for the Historical Society, thanked everyone. While she did that, I drifted toward Walt. He'd ended up near the office like he'd been there all along. He was looking at a patch of grass that didn't seem more interesting than any other patch. I said, "Do you work here?" He said, "Sometimes." His voice was slow and practical, like he saved energy by not wasting extra syllables. I said, We saw something." He nodded, not to humor me, but like he was acknowledging the weather. "You hear boots sometimes?" I asked. He looked at me then, finally. His eyes were gray, washed out. "I don't hear 'em," he said. "I feel 'em." That stuck with me because of the thump through my shoes. He must have seen that land because he added, "They ain't walking anywhere. They're stepping in place, like they're waiting for somebody to turn around and find them." Carla walked over. "You two okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "We're fine." Lena told her about the footprint. Carla said, "It happens." She didn't dress it up. She didn't try to sell tickets. "It happens," she said again and looked past us at the path like she was reading traffic patterns that didn't involve cars. We packed up. We got into my car. I started the engine and put my hand on the steering wheel the way I always do, thumb hooked under the spoke. It was almost 9. We drove out from under the arch. The fences slid by in my side window like piano keys if you stretched them too far apart. 2 blocks away, Lena said. My battery died right at the mausoleum. She was digging through her bag. It was at 60%. I swear to God. "It's fine," I told her. "We got plenty." "No, it's not," she said, more to herself than to me. It was like it went dark on purpose. She opened her extra battery pack, a little power bank with a LED strip that shows its charge. The strip didn't light. She slapped it, shook it, plugged it in. Nothing. "Turn your phone on," she told me. "I want to check the time." "It's 9, I said, glancing at my dash. "No, your phone," she said. I picked it up. Black screen, not dead off. I hadn't turned it off. I hit the button. It buzzed, showed the Apple logo, took longer than usual, came back to life. The lock screen said 7:42 p.m. We hadn't been inside that long. We'd entered at 7:15, the tour is an hour. My dash clock said 8:56. My phone said 7:42. Lena's camera said 7:12. The power bank decided to come back right then. It blinked all 4 bars like it had been full the whole time. We didn't talk for 5 minutes. There's a level of weird where jokes don't stick. We only started again when I turned down our street. She said, "Come in, I want to see the footage." I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "If I don't look now, I won't look tomorrow." That made sense. We went inside. Her footage looked normal at first. The angel statue, the firemen's helmets, headstones with names like Sarah and Hiram. The point where I felt the heel through the ground. There was maybe a micro shake in her camera, but that could have been me bumping her elbow earlier. The point where the woman in black appeared, that part bothers me. The camera pans left across the Hamilton plot. Lena never zooms, she hates digital zoom. A figure is there for exactly 8 frames and then isn't. If you freeze it, you can see a sleeve and what might be the edge of a hat brim. You can't see a face. The 8 frames are clean. There's no blur. It feels like someone cut a perfect person-shaped piece out of time, set it down, picked it back up. The mausoleum shot is worse. The part where the footprint was, her camera stutters there. Not like buffering, like film skipping. A small chunk repeats. Footage of the padlock shows twice, then the step. The step isn't in frame, though. Her lens was pointed an inch too low. You can see the edge of the door and the lower stone. There's a dark, wet shape in the corner that could be anything. When she rewound to look again, the second pass didn't double. The glitch didn't happen. It was a clean pan, nothing special. "It'll cut together," she said, practical again. "I'll use it while Carla talks." "Maybe don't include the footprint," I said. "People will think we staged it." "It's Sacramento TV," she said. "People think we stage everything." She smiled and then lost it. I left around 11. She said she'd text me the edit tomorrow. I said, "Cool." I slept at home, if you can call it that. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to a sound that didn't fit in my apartment. It wasn't the upstairs neighbor dropping something heavy. It wasn't a car door from the street. It was a heel through floorboards, the same heel. So soft it should have been nothing. But because I'd felt it once already under open sky, I could tell it apart from everything else. It came from the hallway, 3 steps from my bedroom door. 1, then nothing. I lay still and counted to 90. Then 2, then nothing. I got up and stood in the doorway and looked at my hall. Cold air from the AC vent moved the edge of a mailer on the console table. The floor was bare except for a scuff near the rug. I told myself the sound had been the AC kicking on. I told myself things in the way you tell a child who is you and who is not. The next day, Lena sent me a link at noon. "Uploading the draft now," she wrote. I clicked. It played fine until the Hamilton part. The 8 frames were gone. The camera panned. The space where the woman stood was empty, and it had always been empty. I texted her, "Where is she?" Lena replied with one word, "What?" Then she was there last night. I wrote, "I know." She wrote, "I exported 3 times." She sent a short clip from her camera screen showing the 8 frames in her in-camera preview. When she imported into her editing software, the preview showed a gap where those frames would be, like the file couldn't hold anything inside that shape. She came over that night with her camera and we played the clip directly from it, without the computer. The woman appeared. Lena paused on the sleeve. We both breathed like we were trying not to fog glass. "We'll just film the camera screen," she said. "We'll include it that way." She raised her phone to record the camera's LCD. We watched the clip live through the lens of her phone. The 8 frames weren't there. The recording on the camera hadn't changed. The live representation of the screen had. That doesn't make sense if you're thinking like a person. It makes a different kind of sense if you think like a place. "Okay," I said and felt heat rise in my face and didn't know if it was anger or embarrassment or fear. "Okay," Lena said back. We didn't talk about the mausoleum. At 2:13 a.m. again, the heel landed in my hall. I was awake this time, waiting for it like someone waits for a train that doesn't come to their stop anymore. I said into my sheet, "You're not invited." I said, "I heard you." I said it soft and not brave. The second heel fell after a minute and a half. The timing was careful. That's what got me. It wasn't random. It wasn't wind. It was patient in a way wind doesn't know how to be. I started working days for a bit. I avoided Broadway. When I had to drive past the cemetery, I looked at the iron fence through my side vision, like you do with a dog that might run. I told myself Walt was right. Whatever it was wasn't going anywhere. It was stepping in place. It was waiting. It would get bored when I didn't feed it attention. Then Lena called on a Sunday morning with her voice in a low register. "Meet me for coffee," she said. We went to a place near the river. She had her camera bag. She slid out the battery and set it on the table. "It won't hold charge anymore," she said. "The battery's new." She showed me the pack. It was cool to the touch even though it had just come off the charger. "You think it's that night?" she asked. I wanted to say no. I said, "Maybe." She said, "I keep cutting the tour, and the audio under Carla's line about the women in black picks up a second set of steps. You can see the levels, but you can't hear it in the export. It's there and not there." She swallowed and looked over my shoulder at nothing. "I'm turning the segment in today." I cut the cemetery. I used Sutter's Fort instead. We didn't go back. We didn't need to. The next week, when the heat came back for a day despite the calendar saying it shouldn't, I woke from a nap on my couch to soft, even breaths coming from my hallway, measured like someone trying to match my sleep on purpose. I lay and didn't move. The breaths continued at the exact pace of mine. When I held my breath, the sound waited a second and then stopped. When I let my breath out, the sound exhaled with me, closer than the corner, not close enough to be a person. That afternoon, I drove to Old City Cemetery at 3 p.m., full sun, no tour. I parked on the east side where the sycamores make a pattern on the sidewalk. The gate was open. I walked to the office and found Walt, because I felt like he was the person who wouldn't say it's stress just to be kind. He was raking under a hedge, methodical. I said, "It came home with me." He leaned on the rake and studied me again like he did the first night. "No," he said. "You took home the space it stands in." He pointed with his chin toward the interior. "You stood and waited for it when you shouldn't have. It knows that shape now. It can stand in it anywhere you cut it out." He meant I made a person-shaped hole by standing still and listening too hard. I hated that he might be right. "What do I do?" I asked. He shrugged. "Walk," he said. "Don't wait." He gestured down the path with the rake handle. "People stop here and ask for something to happen. That's asking for company. Company don't leave just 'cause you shut the door." He put the rake tines down, scraped one long stroke along the gravel, and that sound was the opposite of the boot. It was light and dry and true. I left before dusk. I didn't look at the Hamiltons. I didn't let my feet stick in one place. At home, I moved. That night, when 2:13 arrived, I got up and walked a slow lap from bedroom to kitchen to living room and back. I did it again. The heel thump didn't come. The breathing didn't come. I did that for 3 nights. On the 4th, I decided I was being ridiculous and stayed in bed. The heel came once soft. I got up and walked. It didn't come back. This is the part where a lot of stories say, and it never bothered me again. I can't say that. I can say that it became less often. The space behind me, the place where someone might walk if I were worth following, stayed empty more days than not. But sometimes when I forget and stand in a doorway and wait for my phone to restart, or I pause with my hand on my car door thinking about emails, I feel the weight arrive one step behind me and halt. It doesn't touch me. It holds its breath like I do. It waits. A month after all this, Lena texted me a picture. It was a still frame from footage she'd shot at a parade. Kids in costumes. A marching band. A woman on the sidewalk with a black skirt mid-calf back to the lens. The woman wasn't the point of the shot. She was in the gap between a man with a balloon and a woman with a stroller. You could see the angle of her head like she was listening for a name. "Do you see it?" Lena wrote. I stared. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to see. Then I realized the crowd around the woman had a slight smear to it. The way people blur when they move. The woman didn't. She was crisp like someone printed her into the air. "It's probably nothing," I wrote back. "It's probably a trick of light." "Yeah," she wrote. Then, "I can feel her in the edit bay. It's colder at my chair. I turn and nothing is there." I typed and erased 3 different pieces of advice I wasn't qualified to give. I ended up writing, "Walk." She sent back a thumbs up and then, "The dead there are patient." I didn't respond to that. I'm telling you this straight because I don't know what else to do with it. We didn't summon anything. We didn't break into a tomb. We went on a sanctioned tour and followed the rules and stayed on the path. We didn't chase the woman in black between the stones. She wasn't bait, not in the way TV makes it. She was a person in a place she knew. We were the ones standing around waiting for something to be about us. If you go, and you will because I know how it is when someone says don't, be polite. Keep moving. Don't make space that you plan to vacate later when you're less brave. Don't stand like you're asking. If you hear boots, don't turn every time. Someone patient can wait longer than you can. They don't care about proof. They don't care about cameras. They care about where you choose to stop. It's 2:12 now as I'm finishing this. I'm going to get up and walk when it turns. I'm going to make tea I won't drink and fail at a crossword and breathe like a person does when they aren't trying to match anything else. I don't believe in much beyond what holds a charge and what breaks when you drop it, but I believe a place can learn your shape if you show it. And I believe you can unteach it by motion. If I never go back to Old City Cemetery, it isn't because I'm afraid of ghosts. It's because I'm afraid of standing still. And because sometimes, sitting at a red light on Broadway with the iron fence in my side mirror, I'll see a black sleeve in the corner of my eye, and a careful heel will find the ground without sound. I keep my eyes forward and wait for green. When it turns, I go. I don't check the mirror. I don't need to. The dead there are patient, they wait. And if you give them a place to stand next to you, they might wait forever. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but I need to put this somewhere that isn't just sitting in my head. If you've ever been to Bodie, you know it's not like the other ghost towns people brag about on Instagram. It's smaller than you imagine, meaner somehow, and the quiet gets inside your ears and stays there. The houses lean. The glass in the windows looks like it remembers faces. The cemetery sits out on a low rise above it all, like it's watching the rest of the town to make sure no one forgets how this place ends. This happened last November, the week before Thanksgiving. I drove up with my younger cousin Aiden and my friend Marisa. The plan was simple: a brisk day trip into the snow belt to shoot footage for Aiden's channel. He edits cold places and long roads into these moody travel videos that get way more views than they should. He'd never been to Bodie. I'd gone once as a kid. Marisa is the reasonable one, our voice of no whenever the two of us start thinking we're braver than we are. We left Bridgeport after lunch, and by the time we hit the turnoff, the sky had that pale metallic look that makes your breath feel like smoke. The ranger station was closed, it's off-season, but a sign said day use was allowed until sundown. Another sign warned about the cold and the wind and how there's no services. It also mentioned something I've never seen at a state park. Please do not leave coins, toys, or other offerings at graves. It disrupts preservation and wildlife. Someone had handwritten in Sharpie beneath it. They don't like it. Marissa laughed when she saw that. Very official, she said, but she took a picture anyway. Bodie feels like a setup even when nothing's wrong. The wind runs through these old telegraph poles and makes them hum, and the wooden plank sidewalks creak under your weight, and every nail is rusted in place like a note in someone's ledger. We walked through town first. Aiden filmed with his gimbal, dipping the camera into broken doorways and up at window frames where the lace is the color of nicotine. We didn't talk much. When you're there, you feel like even your voice is too new and too loud. He kept going, and after an hour, we ended up at the base of the hill the cemetery sits on. It's not a big hill, just enough to put the dead above the living. The sun was already sliding behind a bank of clouds and the wind came up, the kind that cuts through everything. I thought we'd do a quick look and head out. Marissa thought the same because she bumped my elbow and said, 15 minutes tops. We climbed. The path was more a suggestion than a trail, packed dirt with a skin of ice that looked like spilled salt. The cemetery fence is white and simple, not much higher than your hip with a gate that squeals when you move it. Inside, wooden markers, a few stone monuments, small fenced family plots, the outlines of lives people tried to make out here and didn't. The first grave we noticed was the child's. You can't miss it. The headboard is small, a tall rectangle of wood with a rounded top, and the name was only half legible. The age was clear, 3 years, 4 months. Someone had tucked a tiny blue car into the snow-hard dirt at the foot of the board. Aiden lowered his camera and just stared at it. That's new, he said. People leave things, I said. They're asked not to. They do anyway. He looked at me. Didn't you say something about kids laughing up here? I shouldn't have told him that. It's one of those things you hear as a kid and it sticks. Some ranger or volunteer telling our group, in that careful museum voice, that visitors sometimes report hearing a child's laugh by the little graves. That and a woman calling a name no one recognizes, and a man's footsteps circling when no one else is around. Marissa shook her head. Let's get your cemetery shots and go. This place feels... She didn't finish. She pulled her jacket tighter. The three of us spread out. I walked toward a stone marker with a wrought iron fence. Aiden crouched to frame the child's grave with the town blurred behind it. Marissa hovered near the gate, hands jammed into her pockets, eyes on the slope back down. The wind dropped. It's strange to describe, but the silence after Bodie wind feels full, like the sound has weight. When it goes away, the space it leaves behind presses in. Aiden stood and turned to say something, and I watched his mouth open and close. I didn't hear the words. It was like that moment after thunder when your ears panic and make that thin, high whistle to keep you company. Then, through that muffled quiet, came the boot steps. You know the dead leaves sound? The stiff crunch that says wait, human weight coming closer? It was that. Not right next to us, but close enough you'd expect to see someone walk around a monument or step through the gate. I turned and there was nothing. The path behind us was empty. The only movement was a scrap of cloth tied to a cross, twitching once, then going still. Marissa looked at me and raised her eyebrows. You hear that too? Aiden did something I'll always remember as stupid and sweet. He took off one glove and set it next to the blue toy car. Then he patted the hard dirt around it like he was calming a cat and said, Hey kid, we're not touching anything. We'll be gone soon. I almost told him to stop. I was about to when the laughter started. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. It was the shape of laughter, air catching in a throat, but small, high, and from somewhere on the far side of the hill, just past the fence line. Marissa flinched like she'd been slapped. Aiden jerked his head up so fast the camera swung and clacked against his jacket zipper. Wind, he said. It didn't sound like a belief. It sounded like an offer. Wind doesn't laugh, Marissa said, and then she squeezed through the gate and stepped back onto the path down. You have 5 minutes. We didn't last 5 more minutes. 3, maybe. I tried to be rational about it. Sound carries weird over snow. The town below has tourists sometimes, even in the off-season. People do stupid things for a thrill. You tell yourself a lot in a place like that. Then I looked down at the child's grave and saw that Aiden's glove and the blue car were gone. Not moved. Not tilted. Gone. The dirt around the spot was smooth. No squirrel tracks, no little burrows. Just the place where they had been and weren't. "Where'd you put it?" I asked. It came out too bright, like I was trying to sell him something. "I left it." He crouched again and brushed the dirt like he thought the glove might be hiding under snow so thin you couldn't see it. His breath clouded in front of him faster than before. "I left it right here." A woman's voice came then, carried so gently we all turned toward it without thinking. "Evan," she called, warm and scolding at the same time. "Evan, not so far." My stomach went cold in a way the wind couldn't do. It wasn't because I knew an Evan. It was because the voice had the exact shape of familiarity. The way my mother said my brother's name when he drifted too close to the street. The way Marisa says my name when I stop listening in a grocery store aisle. Not a recording. Not an echo. A habit. "Okay, I'm done," Marisa said. There was no attitude left in it, only fact. She started down. I took Aiden's sleeve and we followed. He kept glancing back at the fence like he expected his glove to reappear on a post. A small apology with fingers. Halfway to the bottom he whispered, because we were whispering now without meaning to. "Did you hear the second set?" "What second set?" I asked, already knowing. "The smaller steps." He swallowed, like someone keeping time with us. We reached the street and the sound died. That's the part I still don't understand. Most sounds fade. This one just wasn't there all at once, like the person making it had come to the line and stopped. We didn't run. I don't think we would have allowed ourselves. We walked fast without talking all the way down to the main street. The sun was gone from the shallow bowl of the town. The houses were darker because the snow had swallowed all the light and the clouds above had come down to meet the roofs. The parking lot was another 10 minutes past the buildings. Our breath sounded too loud again. We were almost by the schoolhouse when we saw him. At first I thought he was a cutout. He stood with one hand on the rail, looking up toward the cemetery. The brim of his hat was dark with melt, and his jacket had that blue-gray look of a uniform that's been washed 100 times. He turned when he heard us coming, and for a split second relief washed through me. A ranger. A person with keys and coffee and a radio that works when your phone doesn't. "Closing up soon," he said, like we'd made an appointment. His voice had that Sierra Nevada resin in it, slow and dry. "Yeah, we're heading out," Marisa said. "Is the upper gate open?" "It is." He looked past us at the hill again. "Did you leave anything up there?" "No," Aiden said, too fast. "Then, I left my glove, but then it was gone." The man nodded in a way that didn't say we were crazy. It said he had heard this before. He didn't look at Aiden. He looked at me and said, "If you took something, put it back." "We didn't take anything," I said. "We don't—" He lifted his hand, not to shush me, but to calm me down. "Sometimes you take without meaning to. A word, or a little piece of your heat. A promise. It's all the same to this place." Marisa and I traded a look over Aiden's shoulder. It wasn't a "this guy is nuts" look. It was, "Do we argue with this?" We didn't. "Tell me what you heard," the man said. When none of us spoke right away, he added, "Just so I know whether you should leave now or in the morning." "The morning?" I said, sharper than I meant. "You can sleep in your car down the road. People do. It's better sometimes." We heard a laugh, Aiden said, and a woman calling for someone. I put down my glove next to a toy car, and when I looked again, both were gone. We heard footsteps. It felt like they were right behind us, but there was no one there. The man's face made a slow change, like the edge of a cloud crossing a peak. He didn't look afraid. He looked thoughtful. "That little car," he said. "Blue?" Aiden nodded. "People bring them," he said. "Used to be coins." Then a guided tour started telling a story about a boy who liked toy cars, and now it's cars. He paused. "They scatter on their own. They go, and they come back. Sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you do. It's not for you." "I know the sign," I said. It said not to leave offerings. He half smiled. And someone added a line. He pronounced the last words like a quote. "They don't like it." We stood there listening to the wind trying the windows of the schoolhouse and failing. I wanted to be in my car so badly I could picture the texture of the steering wheel under my gloves. "Go on," he said. "Don't talk until you're in your car. Don't turn around if you hear your names, because it won't be your names, it'll just feel like them. And when you start your engine, let it run a minute before you turn on the headlights." "Why?" Marisa asked. "Because it's polite." We did what he said. It took forever to walk past the silent houses and the church and the mine office. Every reflective surface seemed to hold a fraction of motion that wasn't ours. At the edge of the lot, the cold grabbed every piece of skin I'd left uncovered. We slid into the car like we'd practiced it and shut the doors and sat there without speaking, watching our breath climb the windshield. The engine started on the second try. I stared at the dash lights and made myself count backward from 50. When I got to 0, I flicked on the headlights. There, directly ahead of us, was the blue toy car. It was perched on the pole of the parking sign like a dare, balanced on the flat top the size of a coaster. Aiden made a sound a little longer than a word and not as coherent. Marisa put her hand on the dash like she needed to hold the car in place. I put the gear shift in drive. We rolled forward and the toy slid and fell. It hit the packed snow and stopped next to the signpost, wheels up. For one crazy second I thought about getting out and flipping it over, like that would matter to anyone except me. "Don't," Marisa said. I drove. We didn't talk until we hit the main road. What we said then wasn't smart or brave. It was the kind of verbal glitch you have after a near miss. I saw that, right? "Did you see that?" We saw that. We all saw that. Then long quiet, then the same loop again, like if we named it enough times it would become a normal thing we could fold into a story and tell around a table. It snowed that night. Thick, serious flakes that stack in the corners and make the signs go fuzzy. We found a motel with a humming heater in the wall and a sign that said "No boots indoors," and a framed picture of the Mono Lake Tufa Towers above the bed. Aiden took a shower and stayed in there so long the mirror bloomed and dripped. Marisa opened a can of something she'd brought and stared at the TV without turning it on. I sat on the floor by the heater and held my hands above it. Turning them like bread I didn't want to burn. At 2 a.m, I woke up with the unmistakable feeling that someone had just said my name. I didn't move. I waited. I listened for the hiss of the heater and the thin hotel noises of other people living their lives. Water in the pipes, a cough, footsteps in the hall. Instead, I heard from somewhere just outside the window the measured crunch of bootsteps in drifted snow. The room didn't feel haunted. It felt expectant, like a test. I stared at the ceiling and counted the breaths I could hear. My own, Marissa's, Aiden's, trying not to add a fourth that wasn't there. The bootsteps stopped. They didn't fade. They stopped the same way the sound in the cemetery had stopped, like the person making them had reached a line and was deciding. After a minute, a small rattle came from the door. Not the knob, but lower, near the floor. Aiden sat up with a soft intake of breath. Marisa didn't move, but I knew she was awake by the way her breathing flattened, like she was listening with her whole body. A knock followed. 3 taps, tiny and tentative, like someone no taller than your thigh. Then silence again. I tried to think of what the ranger had told us, what courtesy applies at 2 a.m. to something you don't understand. Without planning it, I said, "We put it back." My voice sounded like it belonged to a different room. We didn't take anything. Nothing answered. The heat clicked on and ran for a long time, and when it turned off, I realized the snow sound. The soft, constant hush against the glass was the only thing left. I fell asleep eventually. If I dreamed, I don't remember. We drove home the next day with the blue of the lake to our right and the mountains trying to cut holes in the sky to our left. We didn't stop except for gas. We didn't play music. Every time someone started a sentence with "what if," the rest of us let it die. At the edge of town, I dropped Marisa at her apartment. She hugged me in the way people do when they've agreed not to talk about something and don't want that to feel like distance. Aiden came to my place for a while. We drank coffee that tasted like a reprise of all the coffee we've ever had together, and tried to say normal things about editing schedules and family and Thanksgiving. Eventually, he went home. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed, uploading the body stuff. "Something's weird," I called him because text felt flimsy. He answered on the first ring. "Watch," he said. He shared his screen. The first clips were what you'd expect. Slow pans across the schoolhouse, the church, dead storefronts with counters inside like someone left in the middle of counting. Then the cemetery, the thin fence, the little graves. We were in frame a few times in that way our generation has gotten used to, as textural proof of witness. Aiden stopped on the shot of the child's wooden marker. He'd framed it beautifully. Soft focus town behind, the grave sharp as a coin in snow. "Do you see it?" he asked. "The car?" I said. It was there, blue and tiny and perfect. "Yeah," he scrubbed forward. He paused again a couple of minutes later, from a slightly different angle. The toy car was gone. His glove, too. Okay, I said. That's about when we noticed. He kept scrolling. Clips I didn't remember faded in and out. Some were his, some were mine. A near-silent room with cracks in the plaster. A window with warped glass that made the town look like it was underwater. Then Aiden froze the video on a frame path leading down from the cemetery. Our footprints pressed in dark ovals into the sugar-hard surface. There were 4 sets of tracks. Our 3, sharp and fresh. And a 4th, smaller, offset to the side of Aiden's, keeping the same pace, the same left-right beat. Those 2 were clean. Not smudged like animal tracks. Not wind-shifted. Deep where we paused, lighter when we hurried. I breathed in. The exhale didn't come for a few seconds. There were only 3 of us, Aiden said quietly. I checked the whole roll. That 4th set is with us the whole way down. Sometimes it's closer to me. Sometimes it's between you and me. Sometimes it's behind Marisa. It doesn't cross over our prints. It doesn't step on top of them. It keeps just enough distance. This is a trick of light, I said, and hated how desperate I sounded. You know that hard crust snow? It can crack in weird patterns next to. You want me to delete it? He asked. He wasn't challenging me. He was offering relief. Do you? I asked back. No. He closed the file. I mean, not yet. We didn't talk about Bodie for a month. Thanksgiving came and went. The first real storm of the season dropped into the Sierras like a curtain, and the road was closed for a week. Aiden posted a video about a diner in the desert that plays one song on loop in the bathroom. Marisa sent me a photo of a hawk outside her office window that looked like it was trying to understand glass. When I finally told the story to someone outside the 3 of us, I cut it down because long stories don't do well at work. I cut the ranger and the glove and the toy on the signpost. I cut the knock under the motel door. I didn't mention the tracks. I turned it into something that could sit safely next to coffee and emails and a meeting about client expectations. The person I told smiled and said, I love places with a vibe like what we'd felt was a playlist. I nodded. It was easy to let it go. If that had been the end of it, I wouldn't be writing this. What made me open this and type is what happened last week and the way it happened, and the fact that when I try to line it up with everything else, it makes less sense than if something obvious and impossible had stepped out of a closet. I was walking home from the grocery store around 8 p.m. It was one of those nights that tastes like metal and makes the stoplights look too far apart. The sidewalk was a little slushy from a rain that never committed. I had a bag in each hand and was thinking about nothing in that good empty way your brain does when you're between places. Somewhere behind me, a block back, boot steps began to match mine. I didn't look. That's important. I don't want credit for self-control I didn't have. I didn't look because I was tired and I assumed city night people. The steps were steady. I sped up a little and they didn't. That calmed me. The world made sense again. I turned the corner at my street. My building was halfway down. The steps didn't turn. They did something else. They held at the corner, right where the patch of dead lawn meets the sidewalk. Then they started again, but softer and, this is the part I only understood a second later, closer to the curb, like whoever it was had stepped where the snow was thin and the concrete ate the sound. I stopped at my gate and pretended to fight with my keys. My heart felt like it was opening and closing too slowly. The steps came even with me on the other side of the street and kept going. I didn't lift my head. I didn't give them my face. I let them pass and fade and end at a distance that felt reasonable. Inside, I put the bags down and stood for a long time with my coat still on and my gloves still clumsy on my hands. I was going to let it go, blame tiredness and winter and the way your brain protects you by making things normal. Then I remembered the ranger. Let it run before you turn on your headlights, because it's polite. I boiled water. I poured hot water into a mug and held it in both hands and sat by the window that looks onto the street. The snow had started again, lazy and undecided, like ash. The sidewalk was empty. The track of footprints from earlier, mine, 2 clear paths cutting through the slush, glowed under the streetlight in that flat way wet things glow. 3 paths, actually. It took me a full 10 seconds to see the third. It ran parallel to mine for half a block, starting at the corner where I'd first heard the steps. Where it reached my building, it stopped. Not faded, not stepped over. Stopped. The last print was angled slightly, as if the owner had turned to check the street, or me. They were smaller than mine. Not much, enough I didn't take a picture. I don't know why that feels like something I need to confess. Maybe because proof is the thing you're supposed to want and I didn't. I watched the snow soften the edges until they were gone. The next morning there was a toy car on the stoop. Blue. Not the same one, I can tell myself that and almost believe it. But enough like it that my stomach did the thing it did when Aiden scrubbed through to the fourth set of footprints. It sat at the corner where the step and the column met, tucked in tidy like someone had put it there to keep it safe from getting knocked. I picked it up. I brought it inside and put it on the windowsill. Aiden says I shouldn't have. Marisa says I should have left it where I found it. The ranger would probably say it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what you mean. I don't mean harm. That's the truth. I don't leave offerings and I don't take them. But something followed us out of that cold bowl of a town. And if it didn't, then something else did that knows how to make itself feel like familiarity. A laugh where there shouldn't be one. A voice calling a name in a shape you recognize. Footsteps keeping time so well you forget they're not yours until you stop. On the third night after the car appeared, I woke to the sound of it rolling. Not falling, rolling. Slow enough not to crash into the glass. I sat up and the room was that kind of thin dark where shadows look honest. The car had moved half an inch, maybe less. I didn't check the floor for tilt. I didn't test the sill with a level. I sat there with my heart counting, and when it stopped, the car stopped. I don't have an ending for this. I'm not expecting one. If I go back to Bodie, and I don't plan to, I don't think it will fix anything. This is me writing down a thing that feels like a small debt. If you go, respect the sign. Don't leave a coin or a toy because a tour told you a story. Don't take anything, even by accident. Keep your voice small. And when the wind dies and the quiet presses in and you hear footsteps crunch once, just once, like someone is getting ready to walk beside you, decide which line is yours and do not turn. And if, in the silence between the wind gusts, you hear a woman call a name that could be your brother's or your own, remember, it's not your name. It only fits like one.